in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Are you speaking what, loud enough?
Let me try that again. Better?
Now I can hear you.
All right. So we have the Board of Health.
Perky tonight, considering it's 7 o'clock.
Oh, yeah, and then
we
we're
have
going to see
another
the
meeting
select
after
board
this,
right
is that
after this,
right?
so we told them we'll be down as soon as we're done.
Oh, is that?
Sounds good. So maybe you guys can just introduce yourselves.
Sure, Karen Gwastowski-Govin, chairman.
Debbie Chenard, clerk.
Dan Finn, Vice Chairman.
Austin Magnet, member.
Nice. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
All right, so we are here to discuss Article 25.
Shuffle them papers.
Yep. So we just had a couple of questions, I think, from some discussion from the last meeting, which is, you know, some of the members were wondering what our current measures are that we're taking for mosquito control.
Sure, I mean, so because we're not part of the mosquito control project, the most that we do as a town is the larviciding, which is briquettes that go put into, say, the drains area, the basins, and those get done annually.
Okay.
Other than that, there's no trapping, there's no testing, there's no spraying, there's no preventative education other than passing out the mosquito control and similar type of handouts telling people, you know, practice the 5Ds, don't have standing water. So pretty much the larviciding is really the only measure we have right now, other than education that we can do as a board in a town.
Also, no free removal of tires.
Yeah, no free removal of tires or anything like that.
So that comes with the regional service?
Yes.
Got it.
Curbside.
Yeah.
Okay. How does that work? Do you notify?
Yeah, there's an 800 number.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do, I'm sorry.
What are we currently spending on larviciding right now?
I don't have the
Not
exact
much,
line
but
item, but I
it's-
think it's maybe like less than a few $1,000s annually.
And they go in all the catch basins?
Yep, through the DPW.
Yeah,
And other
DPW.
place, just the catch basins, that's all?
So what would the impact to the budget be?
So from what Tim has told us, it would be 71,000 FY '21.
Okay.
He did say, I've ran into him downstairs before coming up here, he has more details. I know him and Becca were gonna be coming up to meet with you around, like, potentially if we wanted to try to get ahead, say for next season, because certain services don't start obviously as the year goes on. We could, if we wanted to join and the town actually votes to join, there's like that 6-month period of almost like catch-up preventative, where it wouldn't hit obviously FY '21, depending on how the budget hits, where the project, the mosquito control project, would have to petition the state first to see if they could even do this. But then there could be that chunk of money that would be needed if we wanted to do that in that interim period before the FY '21 piece. But he
you
didn't
say
tell
that-
the
can you-
figure.
Can you walk through the timeline? So if we were to pass this at town meeting, how would it go?
So, to our knowledge, and this is just in passing from what I've heard thus far, because we haven't been we haven't involved with the financial piece of the
I see.
timing yet. So it would be for FY '21.
Yep.
But in terms of when services would start, I can't answer that at this point, because I haven't been involved in those discussions.
Yeah, I think typically it's the July 1st
Yeah.
start an
Yes.
annual cost.
Right.
But Tim did say that they could prorate it as Worcester did, I believe, to get us started January 1st and get some of the services.
And what do they do in January? What kind of service do we get in January, and where would that money, what the cost of that money would be?
This year.
Yes. So they do provide a lot of services other than just spraying. Obviously, spraying is the last. So what they do is they do the larvicide mosquito control. They also provide education. They do ditch maintenance. They do mosquito surveillance. Currently, they are covering
So
42 cities,
is there surveillance to identify
the types of mosquitoes.
types of
yes.
mosquitoes and potential presence of diseases? Like, how is that done
Yes.
today?
Right now, for us, there is
There
nothing, other
isn't.
than what the state stepped in and did once we had a case. Same thing with
See.
the spraying.
Okay.
We have nothing right now.
Yeah, so prior to that, we had no idea what there were for mosquitoes in the town. They would end up putting down so many traps based on the size of the community, and then they would test them on a regular basis to see if there's triple E or Western Nile virus, and they report that back weekly. We get a weekly report from the state.
Got it. Okay.
And, I'm sorry, what kind of spraying do they do? It's not like we had with the airplane. It's
No,
a
they do
road-
most of theirs is preventative. They do the larvicides, they also do ditch maintenance. So they will go ahead in and try to improve some of the water flow in some of the ditches. We also talked about getting rid of the tires. They do have a tire pickup, program. They also provide public education. And they also work, and they've started a new program with beaver mitigation to help move some of that water around. So they do some of that also.
But I was wondering what kind of spraying, you said they do spraying in this program.
So people, property owners can request spraying for their property. So,
Which-
spraying is done only upon request from a property
And
owner.
that's just having a truck go by and,
Or guys with
Or
backpack
the,
sprayers.
yeah,
Or-
the,
right.
yeah,
To the yard.
yeah, it's not aerial.
So
The state's
typically,
the one who
it's,
does the
by
aerial.
Well, I
request of the
understand that, but-
property owner only, unless, spraying is ordered by, like, state officials, like what was recently done in the, community.
which would be an additional cost to the homeowner, correct?
No,
No?
Not the state
No.
orders that, no.
No, the state covered the cost of all that aerial spraying we had.
No, I
Ah.
understand that. No, when you said the homeowners could have spraying done under
Yep.
this mosquito control,
yes,
is there a cost to the homeowner for
No.
that? No, there
it's
isn't.
part of the program.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there any cost to the town, like, well, like hypothetical, let's say 10,000 households all request it? What happens then?
No, they said the program, the program, the amount of money that, we got told by, the state is based on the Department of Revenue assessment. So I don't know how they actually come up with the price, but it's determined by the Department of Revenue's assessment. So they must look at the number of households, the size of the community, and that's when they come up with, the price.
The total land area.
Yep.
Yeah,
What happens though, like in a scenario with, like, too many people are requesting the spraying for their property? Like, how do we prioritize that? There's gotta be some sort of point where it's like, hey, you guys aren't actually paying for this much stuff.
So I personally asked the question about, with all of this that's going on with, the triple E, what would happen is if all of a sudden, all the local towns that are not involved decide they wanna go ahead and join this program, as of, this year. We were told by Tim, and there's two Tims, by the way.
Yeah.
There's Tim that is in charge of, the mosquito control program. And he said that they have not had any problem. They are able to get more than enough staff to be able to keep up with the demand of all the towns and the cities that are joining them. So he did not feel it would be an issue. Typically with the Eastern equine encephalitis, that is something that typically comes, kind of in spurts. It's usually every, 6 or 7 years, they said. So we haven't seen any of the triple E for 6 or 7 years, and that's usually how it comes. So we're hoping that we're not gonna see this again for another 6 or 7
and
years.
unfortunately, it usually comes in a couple year waves.
Yeah.
嗯
2 or 3 years.
Do you know if property owners, when they call to have their house sprayed, does it only treat mosquitoes or does it also treat ticks?
To my
No,
knowledge,
it's
it's
just
just
mosquitoes.
mosquitoes.
And like the town, we had 2 sprayings. I don't know if you're aware that we had 2 sprays. And one of them takes care of the larva and one of them was taking care of the adult mosquitoes. So that's why they actually had to do 2 separate sprays.
So how often would they spray?
It's, that's the last resort?
That's always the last resort.
Yeah, so they don't just go around on a whim and spray the town.
It's only by request.
Yes.
Or if we had been part of the project when all of this Triple E started, we could have not waited for the state to have to step in and do all the aerial. We could have worked with the project to get them out and start working on spraying from the roadside.
Right, so
attack.
presumably they would have potentially caught,
We probably would have had traps that would have caught it.
they would have seen it already and
Ahead of time, yeah.
ahead of time, yeah.
So how effective is this program?
Well, they've been in business since 1973, and they currently have 42 member cities, communities.
And there are similar projects across the state
State,
also.
right. So this
So
one
we
is
don't have any really statistics on how much it reduces the disease?
I mean, I don't know if,
Without looking into.
I don't know
the-
if you can find out if there's
Yeah.
any information with that, but
Some of the adjacent towns are Millbury,
I
Northbridge.
don't know if there's anything in here about
Newbury,
stats.
Westboro, and of course Worcester. I talked to a couple of folks on a couple of different boards of health, and they said they was pretty pleased with the service. They haven't had any complaints about from homeowners. Very few infected bites in those areas.
but people will still have to be cautious, though.
oh, yes.
Yeah, there's no,
Program.
There's
There's
no,
just
yeah,
no
no
way.
100% guarantee.
And what do they do with the homeowners who have ponds in on their property, or a lot of wetlands?
A lot of their services are they try to do a lot of education. So their services are, education, they also can go into the schools, and educate the kids, what to do. So a big part of there is, public education. Yep. So, and again, the 5 Ds.
Is the Board of Health unanimous in recommending that we do this?
Yes.
Yes, and this is, Adam, I know some of you look very new to this board, but so you remember, this has come in front of, town meeting. This is at least the 3rd time that I know of, if not the 4th time. And it's been turned down all the prior times.
Mm-hmm.
So-
I think it's,
This is the right time.
well, it's also unanimous that we bring it to the town, to let the townspeople weigh in on their decision as opposed to having the onus on us or you to say it's not worth it and then have an issue and 71,000 divided by 18,500 people is like $3.83 per person and. I don't
Yeah.
know, I'm really not that good at math. But anyway, it just seems to me that, that's a good investment to prevent death or a single death or a brain damage.
Yeah, the challenge I think that we see on something like this is, I get the math and I think that's fine, but I mean, there's no money left in the municipal budget. So unless this is part of override funds, that's like an FTE that we can't let go because we have such low staff levels. So we really kind of are looking at this like, is this worth it? Because that 70,000 as of today will need to be cut from somewhere else.
I guess it comes down to how worth it is our people's lives
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and health and safety.
Are
'Cause-
any towns dropping out of the program that were paying for it and still became critical risk and the state still stepped in?
I can't,
So when we
I
did ask him
don't
about
remember
anybody
anyone.
dropping out, he said there's only been one town that he can recall. Typically, when you join, they ask typically for a 3-year contract, or commitment, and he had said there was only one town that he could recall in the recent future that dropped out, but then 2 years later, they joined again.
Okay.
So,
And so, they do larvicide as well as, what we do. Would there be any budget offset at all from what we do? Transferring that work over
I
to
would
them?
imagine
I
we
would
would
imagine,
not
yeah.
continue doing our own larviciding. It seems like pointless for them to do it and us to do it.
Right,
And I think if we, on the flip side, ask the DPW to do half of this, I think the cost would be astronomical, or twice as much, or less.
sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, just from a financial standpoint, it'd be interesting to understand how much that costs us. So instead of it being 71, whatever.
It's probably like,
What-
it would
what-
probably end up being like
The net cost would be what would-
66 or something, or 68,000 still.
So that must be a line item in their budget in DPW, I think.
I think it technically hits
yeah,
under our
technically, I
budget.
think it comes in our budget for the buying of the larvicides.
Yeah.
And then they go ahead and distribute them.
So did the Board of Health have a discussion on maybe having this starting in January and paying for that 6 months in additional to the 3-year contract? Is that something that,
We
You would
ideally
like
would
to-
like it starting as soon as possible. Because especially the public education part of it can start now. They do go into senior centers, you know, when I talked about they go into the schools. They also go to, any health fairs that you have in the town. So they do try to, get education out there to the town folks. And again, the tire pickup, that can be done at any point, in the year.
And personally, I think at least a 3-month or a 1/4 jumpstart as opposed to waiting till July 1st.
July 1st, it's too late, yeah.
Yeah, July 1st, you're already at risk.
Yep, mosquitoes have already come.
well, unfortunately, that's where our budget
Yeah,
starts.
I
but-
know.
Which is
Yeah.
why Tim McInerney, not Tim from the
Right,
project,
Tim,
had
yep.
said, you know, could we somehow get that earlier jump so that way we're not behind the 8 ball already when it comes to next year's mosquito
Yeah.
season?
And that would depend upon what we have in this year's budget.
And the state would still need to grant approval also, obviously.
And how long does it take for them to grant approval? Do you have any idea?
No idea.
I imagine they'd be quicker because of the high risk.
Well, yeah,
that
because
they
Governor Baker did come out last week and say something needs to be done. And pretty much like, and I could pull up the actual article, pretty much in no uncertain terms, that towns and cities that aren't part of mosquito control need to become part of mosquito control. So I don't know what his plan is in terms of forcing potentially towns to become part of mosquito control, because it's voluntary right now.
Yes.
But it didn't specify what he really meant by, like, we're gonna have to do something to get
Yeah.
people to be part of this.
Maybe you could come up with
Yeah, maybe money would be a good way to get people to join as a town and city that aren't part of it.
The state's not known for giving mandates and then
No.
paying for them.
No,
So-
we were surprised when we heard and we confirmed that they were actually paying for the spraying that they were doing, so that was a,
Well, I think that
bonus
was
in
a
our
risk that
world.
they had to take. I
Yeah.
think they needed to do that,
yeah.
so.
So
And
in
we
talking
just-
with other boards, do you have a sense of when the actual mosquito control, like the surveillance and the preventative measures, and when that cycle starts for us to think about if we were gonna start earlier than July, you know, realistically, with the actual control part of it, when would we be looking at?
When we talked to Tim, we did ask him if there was the potential that we could start early before the fiscal year, and he said, yes, we could. He did not give us a time frame to say when we could, 3 months sooner or 6 months sooner. He did not say that. He had just said that there would be the potential. Because Worcester obviously started early, before their fiscal year.
All right. I mean, I think it's going to be hard to find money this year or any year. So if we're having money that's unbudgeted, I would imagine that it would be more palatable if we could start when the actual mosquito control. I appreciate the educational component of it and all that, but it being unbudgeted money, if we're going to start the program, it might be a little bit more palatable to start when we're actually doing the chemical treatments and the preventative stuff. So.
And if that were the case, I would think we'd have to have a warrant article that has that in it as well, because this one is just for starting the mosquito control program in July 1st.
It states that the start date, 19th start. And I think that's information we could get tomorrow perhaps and get back to you. I don't know if you have any decisions, supporting it or
Yeah.
not, but
Yeah, mosquitoes are most active once the temperature reaches about 60 degrees. So probably looking around April or so when mosquitoes start coming out.
Yep.
We do have 2 educational sessions set up on October 16th for the public, about the mosquito program, for any town, citizens that would like to attend.
Where's that and when is it?
It's October 16th at the Municipal Center. There's one session at 2 to 3 in the afternoon, and there's another session from 7 to 8 p.m. And that is going to be run by the Central Mass Mosquito Control Project. So Tim will be there. And also, they talked about Dr. Telford
Yeah.
possibly being there also. He is from Tufts, and his specialty is mosquito.
Got it. Okay, so for any of the members of the public, October 16th, the Municipal Center, 2 to 3, 7 to 8.
Yes.
In which room, do you know?
Pretty sure it's supposed to be A.
A?
Got it. Okay.
The question is it possible for you folks to look at our budget, the Board of Health for this year, and judge where we're at versus the projected budget to see if there's any wiggle room there to take money out of an existing year, say,
So for this year, to pay for the extra months to start early?
yeah, if there's any room in our Board of Health budget. I don't know if you keep track of monthly or quarterly, probably to see.
Yeah, but we have
I
expenditure
haven't
reports.
looked at it
I haven't either.
lately. I
I
don't
haven't
know
seen it
what's.
lately.
It's pretty early in the year anyway, so.
Yeah, it is.
Right,
I mean,
So
Um,
probably at least be.
But yeah, I mean, that's a potential for sure.
Yes, yes, that is possible to look at it. You'd want to look at both the management report and the revenue and expense report. And then can you use some of that money, not this year, but, or however you want to maneuver it? Yes, you can, and there are some accounting techniques that you have to do. Anita would,
you may have to
Run us
make
through that.
adjustments of not doing something or
Mhm.
limiting
Well,
what
yeah.
you're gonna do. I mean,
Remember, it was a bump up to grant us $5,000 for training, and I don't think we're too close to that.
Yeah.
No, and honestly, this is more important than our training.
Mhm.
Right, so there
Yeah.
might be a couple of spots that could squeak out a little bit.
that accounting approach is perfectly appropriate. Just have to find out how much you have.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
but I can't imagine that the cost for 6 months is gonna be cheap.
3 months might be nice, April, May, and
It,
June,
it might be nice for you to
because
find
that could
out.
be, the perfect time for it to start,
Yeah.
is when the weather starts to get,
You
warm.
may want to just get some numbers for what,
Okay.
3 months or 6, if you start at like April and you got 3 months,
Mhm.
and then look at your budget and see if there's someplace where you could adjust it and decide that you wanted to go.
And,
that way.
and maybe
Central
see if
Mass
we can
Regional Public
negotiate
Health Alliance, instead of them getting
for those early
raised.
months,
I
you know?
Right.
I mean, if we could, work a negotiation where we're saying we're going for town meeting,
Right.
our
Mhm.
budget doesn't start until July, but could you help us out with these early months? We really want to get started next year,
Mhm.
Or entry fee as opposed to.
right?
And you wouldn't have to get town approval, correct?
Town approval for,
For doing the mosquito control if you did it 3 months earlier? I mean, this is for starting
This is for
July
the
1st.
fiscal year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to because they're not just gonna come for 3 months and then if it doesn't,
No, I'm saying
no,
if
if we
they
got
decide to do
approved now,
this,
right.
are we gonna have to go to town meeting to get that approval for the 3 months?
Do we have to have 2 approvals? Do we have to have it for the 3 months as well as for the year?
I don't know.
You're using
Well,
current
this is for,
funds.
this warrant article's for July
Right.
1st, but they're looking for April.
but this is because you're asking for additional money. If you already have the money set aside, it's right now it's for a different use, but if, you know what I mean, if it's used for something similar,
Well, I'm just
Health.
saying that they had to come to town meeting to get approval to join the mosquito
Right.
control
Yes.
program. So are we gonna have to do that for 3 months? I don't know. That's something you'd have to find out
Mhm.
from Tim.
I think if it's coming from another budget, you would have to.
no, she's saying just to be able
No,
to
'cause we have to
spray
get
and
a-
be part of this group, is what she's saying, not the
'Cause-
money.
That's
Because
it.
we're
Be
going to
part
town
of the
meeting to
group.
get mosquito control, do we have to go have another town meeting to get the 3 months before that in order to get town approval?
Well, this doesn't,
Yeah, this
this
is-
article
it
doesn't necessarily
doesn't
say when it's starting, it's
it
just
shouldn't
saying
be.
that we could be
That's right.
part of the project.
Well,
I don't
that's
think we-
true.
I think that second question is just a budget thing.
Well,
But I know what
then
you're
why,
saying.
why
I
are we going to, I guess what I'm
No,
a
you're
little
saying-
frustrated, if we're joining the mosquito control program, do we not have to get town meeting approval?
Yes,
That's
Yes.
what this is.
We do.
So if we decided to do it 3 months earlier,
it shouldn't matter, because this isn't giving you a date.
so we could, is this program gonna start from April till next July?
We'll be able to,
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
It's gonna be
So-
the fiscal year, usually this is asking for the fiscal year, so they're asking for.
I don't think it's asking for any years, it's just saying to become a
No,
member.
I think Sue is right on. We're looking at the 2021 budget.
Right.
That's what all of this is about. Or adjustments to the 20
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah, that's what
No.
October is.
Well,
This is
they-
adjustments to the 20 budget, so if we can ask for that money here, then we can adjust the budget.
I don't think you have to ask for the money, because you already have the money.
Well,
what
if
they're
we,
saying.
what I'm saying is, I think I'm not explaining this well. We have to get approval for one fiscal year. And if we looked at their budget for FY20 for 3 months, do we have to get town approval to have that mosquito control program started then?
Well, to thicken the problem, if you're saying that this is a 3-year commitment, then that has to be also approved. Because
Yes.
they can't sign it unless,
Well, that's where we're going to town meeting, get a 3-year contract.
Right, so I think we need to understand.
I'm confusing everybody
Yeah.
at this point.
Well, these are all good questions,
It's
though.
an important discussion, though. I think we need to understand what our obligation is. If this
Yeah.
passes a town meeting, does that obligate us to start in 2020 for the year's program? So are we obligated to those costs in April and May? Or can we start the program in July? If it's, if it's that early part, then I think that's just more of a budget transfer discussion.
correct, that's what I
Yeah.
think.
So
And
the
it
warrant
would be
article
nice-
would have to be revised.
Yeah, that was just.
That
gonna
would
say
be the best way
This
to
is
go.
Right.
completely
Oh, I
vague.
agree, and that's what they should look into before we go to town meeting to see
Real soon.
if that's possible, but, so we can
That's
say
what I'm
to the
thinking.
townspeople, this will be starting in April. It'll be a year and 3 months instead of,
Right.
3 years.
And I think that should be the recommendation, is that we start, but we need to be able to articulate the costs and budget impact for this year as well as next year.
And that theoretically would be $8,000, but for a quarter, so it could be
Mhm.
less if we negotiated,
Right.
help to jump us into the program. We have a meeting on Monday, and so we should probably gather some information and discuss it.
Yeah.
And is that soon enough to get back to you folks with the?
Yes, our last meeting is next Tuesday, right, Sue? Yep,
Yeah.
And we
So-
have Tim here on Thursday, right?
we have Tim here
Yeah.
Thursday.
We're
And
gonna
he
have to
said
ask him
he had
about-
more info than we did around what's possible, financials, et cetera.
Got it.
Since we're talking about 71,000, which is gonna strain the 2020 budget, is there any thought of making this similar to what we did with the pay-as-you-throw? Make it in theory, a separate assessment?
It's probably a Tim question.
Not
That's a
to send
Tim
out
question,
bills
yeah,
to everybody
'cause-
for $7.
Yeah, they are gonna know.
All we were told is 71,000 FY '21 cherry sheet. That's
Yep.
literally all we were
Yeah,
told.
just did assessment. I don't know.
Got it.
I mean, it's just coming off the assessments, which affects
Okay.
our operating budget, because that's 71,000 more out of our
Okay.
budget.
Can I ask my questions?
Yep.
Any more questions?
Tire dumping, I thought was really illegal. Is there any way of chasing down the dumper and fining them, say, $71,000?
Sure, look at their fingerprints.
I saw the picture of what had happened in Auburn, and I thought, my God, that's gotta, how could that be just your neighborhood guy replacing tires?
That's extreme, but I have a feeling that, I don't know for sure, depends on the street, I guess, but every third or fourth or fifth house probably has 1 or 2 tires under
the
their
porch.
deck out back or
All
something
right.
like that, you know. it's-
And rain barrels do not present a risk, standing water and all that?
They do.
They do,
Good.
and that's all part of, that would be all part of the public education.
Aye, there goes that idea.
Wheelbarrows, anything, I mean, people, you know, put a
The,
tarp over something and it has divots, you
Yes.
know, it's
Pool-
great, you know,
pool
pools the
covers.
water, everything.
Canoe gets
Yeah.
filled with
Yeah.
water.
I'm gonna have to go out and hit all my houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was also reference in the information online about the EPA. And apparently the EPA is easing off a whole lot of regulations for whatever reasons. Does that present an issue for this kind of program?
Not that
The
I've
EPA
heard
starts
thus
to say, "Oh, don't worry
far.
about mosquitoes?
I don't think it's federally funded.
Right. Yeah,
So-
these
Yeah.
folks are affiliated with the Department of Public Health and the Department of Agriculture in Massachusetts, so. it's one of
Okay.
the state-
Yeah.
And the last question, especially considering this kind of issue, who's in charge? You guys, town administration, select board,
In charge of
program?
what?
the whole execution? We're going to spray, we're not gonna spray, we're gonna charge money, we're not gonna pay money, all of those issues. Staffing, management, whatever.
It's all done by the Central Mass Mosquito Control Program.
But they're gonna come to somebody in Grafton and say, this is what we wanna do, or this is what we need to do. Will they come to you or to Tim or
Yeah,
Rebecca?
like who,
or-
who would they report their surveillance findings to?
As far as I know, they report them to us.
Mhm.
Yeah, but we'd have to question, because technically the Regional Alliance
Is the one that's, responsible
Is-
for the public.
responsible for public health, and they technically report in through the administrator from a contract
So
perspective,
it
et
sounds,
cetera.
yeah. So it sounds like it would be Central Mass Public with the Regional Health Alliance.
Well, no, I'm not saying that the mosquito control project
Would
wouldn't
be,
report
right.
into them. I'm just saying I could
We would have
envision
to
it
go-
potentially being similar
Mhm.
in how the contracting goes and the reporting structure.
And that means it's Tim or it's the Board of Health?
With that, technically, that contract goes through the select board and,
Be Tim, I'm
Tim.
pretty sure.
It'd be Tim,
Tim.
yeah. his-
Okay,
that's the vision. We hadn't gotten to that level, because at this point, we don't even know
No
if
forgetting
it's gonna
it,
get
mhm.
voted in.
Sure. Okay.
okay, that's it.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, darn.
Yep, that would be great. That would be helpful. We can also ask Tim on Thursday, but. Thank you.
No, I asked that question.
Haven't the slightest, Barry.
But it's not really affecting them because
All
it's
right,
not
next up, we got
spraying.
CPC.
No, they're only spraying, no, they're only spraying if you request it.
Come on up.
That's in the yards. They're gonna do it longer. I think that's what it was doing.
You guys want to introduce yourselves and then we can get going?
I'm John Stevens, Chairman of the Community Preservation Committee.
Hey, John?
I'm Ken Holberger, Treasurer of the
Ken.
committee.
Thanks for coming, guys. All right. So we're looking at Articles 5 through 11.
I'm not reading the thing. I don't see where it says that there's a start date.
So you just want to ask, or do you want us to discuss?
If you just want to start from 5 and we'll go down, and if anybody has any questions, we can.
5 is a continuing project for Cisco Homestead that we've given them funding in the past. They've gotten funding from Mass Historical, and this is a continuation. They're actually, the envelope of the building is now secure, and now they're working on the interior. And this is for architectural design type work
Right.
to do the restoration of the interior of the building.
So we did what was done before for this,
Is all the exterior.
all
work.
exterior work that was done, okay.
John, the whole exercise of creating the design documents is then to go ahead and build out the inside of the,
That will
to
be
make-
to restore the building as it was to create a museum.
okay,
There, I think, 2 or 3 periods of the house. And so each one will be interpreted a little bit differently based on the age. And then this will be their museum where they can have all their artifacts, whatever they have for the Nipmucks. And eventually, that's what they hope to have, is a museum that's open to the public to have
Okay.
tours for the school kids.
any idea what it'll cost to actually,
I think this will
The
tell
interior.
us, this
ah,
is,
okay,
And the town would be, at most, only a contributor to the cost, because they get grants from other sources as well.
okay,
So we actually have only a fairly small part of what it is that's being expended in this project. I'd also like to say that this is the second or third time, second time that the town has made grants to them, and they were very good with their execution of the
Mhm.
original grant. Everything was straight up, worked well.
okay. So if this is gonna be set up as a museum, are you gonna add a parking lot or something along those lines?
right now, they have, I don't know if it's just grass or gravel, because it's been a while since I've been to a powwow, but they have every July a powwow.
Right.
And I'm not real sure that they need asphalt parking. they
Okay.
may at some point decide that they want that. This is a relatively small space. It just depends on the logistics of what they plan to do. I don't know if they'll say, okay, we can't have bus tours. We'll just have, school buses have to drop kids off on the street, they walk.
Okay.
It's real near the Lions Club, so.
Or they can park at the Lions
There, okay.
Club, and we're planning to do work there. So, I mean, there are multiple ways that this could pan out, but this is, I think, way ahead of where they are, because I'm sure it's gonna take multiple years. Once this gets done, then they have to decide what they're gonna do, get the funds to do it, then actually do the work. So I would think this is a long-term
Okay.
project.
There's another house with a Cisco label on it, on Merriam. Is that related to this in any way?
Just trying to
Merriam near 140, before you go up the hill to get to 140.
I'm not aware of
I
that.
do not know.
No,
I
we don't know.
Okay,
And that could have
That'd be
been
a good question for them.
a relative that lived there.
could have been, yeah.
Without a street number, if you gave me a street number, I could look into it.
I don't know.
Your committee might also be interested in, the tribe is pursuing archaeological projects on the conservation properties, their property plus the conservation properties that abut the property.
Okay.
And so they're likely to find a variety of interesting artifacts.
I'm not sure I should ask this one. There's a sign there that refers to the land as always having been owned by the Hassan-Messet Indians or Nipmuc Indians. And there's a phrase they use in there. It's
It's
never,
the only land in the Commonwealth,
okay, it's never been owned by the,
white man.
does that annoy anybody, given the tenor of contemporary society?
Well, I hope
No,
not. I
not
hope
me.
not.
I mean, it's
I hope
valid,
not.
but,
It's, that sign is really old,
Yeah.
and I think everyone just needs to consider it for what it is.
okay.
So,
And
they,
they are they're not worried about all of this. They're happy with Grafton being the Indians. They don't find that insulting. I've talked to the former chief's daughter who's doing all this work about it, and at least for the local Nipmucs, that's a non-issue.
Okay.
so they have, other grant sources that are available to them.
They have gotten
They explore
Mass
those other-
Historical grants. I don't know if,
Yeah.
the Blackstone Valley, I think, also gave them, when they started all this, they had a, historic structures report. And I think, Mass Historical and the Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor funded them.
Yeah, the CPA's role in the first round and in this round are both to get things started.
Okay, that's kind of where I was getting at. They obviously have other funding sources, so
Just-
how does Grafton and CPC
Yeah,
feel
we
about
basically get things started.
putting money into it? Yeah,
I think we're very supportive of them
of the mission.
and what they want to do, because what they have to tell is more than just Grafton. This is more than regional, it's the Commonwealth. That this is the only land in the Commonwealth that it's never been owned by white men, by Europeans. It's always been owned. It was never, they shrunk it down, but this is the only piece of land that's never not been owned by the Nipmucs.
Sure. It's just, their cultural aspects aside, you feel confident that they exhausted all their other options for funding this sort of thing, or is it just, again, we talked about this in the last meeting, they just came and made a request, and this is something that, the CPC looked at and said it's a good project, so
Well,
we're just gonna
yeah,
move
the
forward.
request that they made was kind of for, more of the project, and we focused in on the genesis of the project.
Got it. Okay.
And that's where we are now.
So the signal to them then was, we're gonna seed it, and you guys are gonna go look
Oh,
for
yes.
money.
Yeah.
We'll still be supportive.
Of course.
Right, yes, but they'll go do what they did last time.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions?
No, I got this.
Let's move on to 6.
6, 7,
These numbers aren't right.
and 8, in terms of dollars, are annual 10% reserves.
Yep.
That have to be set aside for affordable housing, for open space, and historic preservation. And Ken has, I guess, updated numbers.
Yeah, every year, this time of year, the town accountant, the town administration, and the CPA committee get together and try to figure out what the proper numbers are for these reserves and the following article as well. And the numbers are not known until, they're unknowable until the town closes its books. And the town, these numbers here were estimates made prior to the town closing its books. That has now been done. And those parties I just mentioned have got together, and we do have the proper numbers that need to be in this warrant now. And so I can read them off if you'd like.
Sure.
The three reserves need to be 53,957. And that's, if you want to know the cents, you can't have it, but it's 53,957 for those Articles 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah.
And that leaves for the fund for CPA purposes, the total there will be 273,750.
Say that number again, 270.
273,750. They're close, but these are the numbers reflective of the close. And we calculate them the same way every year.
Got it.
And this is the calculations with the known close values. Now, I don't know how this is gonna work for the warrant. Is this, will the numbers be changed?
It'll be in the motion.
Okay,
Those numbers will be in the motion.
all right, good.
A lot of times the warrant just says a sum. So
Right.
this was just, because we don't plug in numbers, and for whatever reason, these numbers did get plugged in,
Sure. It's pretty close.
Right,
we-
these
we
were the
know.
these were the earlier estimates.
because we know they
We understand that.
take a while to get nailed
Just
down.
out of curiosity, what is your balance for affordable housing in that reserve? Do you have any idea?
The affordable housing reserve gets zeroed out at the close of every fiscal year with the warrant that we have at the spring special town
Okay.
meeting, which dumps the entire amount into the Affordable Housing Trust. And so at the end of the year, it's always zero.
So this
So how much
53,
did you
And so-
dump in? That's what I'm asking, I
and so-
this
guess.
53 will go to them.
53,
This,
yeah,
yes,
okay.
this 53 will start it up. And
Okay.
then when we find out, surprise, surprise, the state match was bigger than we
Yep, okay, I
estimated,
got you.
we'll increase it by a little bit more.
Okay.
Got it.
So there's about $53,000 for affordable housing.
Right, and well, I guess we're gonna add, my guess is we'll add another, somewhere, $5,000, $10,000 to it in the next town meeting, and then at the special meeting, that'll go
Clean it
to the
out.
trust.
It's 2 steps.
So the 5,000 is the 5 to
I'm just guessing.
10%
The
match,
5,000 is-
whatever it
is-
is.
They're actually hoping to get, we just had a training workshop with the coalition director last Thursday, and he said they're hoping to get 20 million added to this round from the appropriation, from the state appropriation, which it depends on, I think it had a net, some kind of net budget.
If-
After everybody's had their say over the budget, there's still a net balance that they are second. Somebody else gets a first crack.
In
And they
broad,
get a
in broad
second crack.
terms, people are kind of hoping that the minimum match will be double what we estimated. And, there's no promises, we're just kind of hoping that it'll be double.
Sure.
And so that'll add $50,000 to the revenue and extra $5,000 for each of those reserves.
So what is the ballpark total in the Affordable Housing Trust to be used for affordable housing?
What's a guess for next year? Or, for when it gets
Their
transferred?
total balance that they have in, that they have access to is,
We don't know.
I think it's short of $1 million. They have quite a bit of money.
But
because
you would need to ask them.
That's
We don't know that.
our money, and they also received part of the settlement, or the settlement that the town had with Pulte, I believe.
Yep.
And they spent some of that
Yep.
on staff, and so,
They have, you have to ask them.
So
it's
I'll
a-
take the million for my affordable house.
it's a decent amount, but it's not enough to build anything, and that's our,
Yeah.
that's kind of where we are, is how do we build something?
All right. let's move on to Article 10.
Oh, Article 7, is that the money that goes to Pell?
Excuse me?
Article
No.
7, the open space reserve?
These are just reserves, they're set, we have to set them
Those are
aside,
mandated reserves.
that we
Pell
can
is
spend
separate.
in the spring.
The same with Article 8.
Okay.
And those are all three the same amount. Article 10. The CPA and the town have been purchasing open space properties from time to time over the past forever, 20 years, way before that. But anyway, 20 years for sure. And the town has been usually placing conservation restrictions on the open space properties. And often, in fact, if not, at least most of the time, if not all the time, those conservation restrictions were offered to and are being held by the Grafton Land Trust, which is a separate private organization. And it turns out that conservation restrictions come with a lot of things that are supposed to be done by the holders of the conservation restriction. And one of the things that's supposed to be done is at the outset of the restriction, when the property is purchased, there's supposed to be a baseline report which documents the condition of the property and its boundaries so that any changes can be compared to the original baseline.
So is this, is Stowe Road one of those properties that we just did in the Springtown
That's what
meeting?
this one is.
Yes. The Land Trust has decided that it better comply with those requirements that it has, and it has quite a few conservation restrictions, and it has been hustling to get caught up on baselines and then annual reviews of all these properties. And it turns out that the CPA allows the town to use CPA funds to do baseline and annual reports with CPA funds for properties that were purchased with CPA funds. And the Land Trust is trying to do 4 baseline reports. And it turns out they cost about $2,000 a piece, plus or minus, depending on how big the property is. And this warrant is to request $4,000 to do baseline reports on 2 of the properties that were purchased by the town using CPA funds. The Great Meadows Gateway up on Keith Hill Road, and the recent Robertson Chapter 61B withdrawal, which is now part of the town's Silver Lake Conservation Area.
Right.
The town has purchased 2 other properties in the past before CPA was here, and also gave the Land Trust, and Land Trust accepted conservation restrictions for those. And the Land Trust has requested $2,000 for those 2 as well. The CPA can't pay for them because they weren't purchased originally by CPA funds. So the Town Administration Office suggested a warrant described, the warrant as shown. No,
So 11
oh,
is.
there's 2
even though it
warrants,
says
10 and 11.
no, 4 CPC is not,
So,
that's not
so Article
CPC.
10 is for CPA funds for $4,000 for the 2 properties, Silver Lake Conservation and the Great Meadows Gateway.
So 10
Article
is,
11 is
10 are
for,
properties that were purchased with CPA
Right,
money.
because we can only do the reports for property that we purchased.
Yep.
That CPC funds have to be for all these things, and that's where things get tricky, is
So-
if you don't initially
right.
buy it,
So-
then you can't do other.
So 11 is raised and
So
appropriate.
Article 11 is named improperly.
Misnamed, but the article's correct.
And this is for the 2 properties purchased by the town and, given to the Land Trust to, observe the conservation restriction. The Weber property up behind the elementary school, North Grafton Elementary, and the Mazza Farm parcels, which are also part of the Silver Lake Conservation Area. So that's what these 2 grants are. One's CPA funds, one is town funds.
Yep.
For the town purchase properties. It's a good deal. It's not that much money, and it's important. It's that, it's an important, it's required by law to be done.
Sure. So did we hire those out?
Yes, they're being done by a contractor carefully chosen by the Land Trust. And the Land Trust has properties of its own that other properties with CRs on them that they are doing, that are not town properties, that they're having to pay for themselves.
Can you say that again?
I was saying, Land Trust has properties for which it holds conservation restrictions
Okay.
that are owned by a third party, not the town. And they have the same requirements to execute on those properties as well.
Oh, interesting.
And so they're engaging, they're
And this is,
they're coming up with with their own, their own money to do those.
Sure.
Do you
this
know
is
how
a
Land Trust-
requirement by
State law.
CPA that we have a restriction. It has to be held by a third party. And it's because the town typically is the one that can create issues. It has a conflict of interest of, we have this land, we'll do it what we want. So if you have a third party looking at it, which would be the Land Trust, I believe
Yep.
in this case, they're gonna say, oh, nope, you can't do this, and they're supposed to inspect it annually, they're supposed to make sure that the restriction is being upheld.
Yeah, there have been no problems to date.
But that's
Most of
legally,
the
you have to
problems are,
protect yourself.
most of the problems come from the butters.
Got it. Are there big liabilities for the land trust based on those other properties?
If anybody has to go to court for anything, there's big liabilities.
Hmm.
That's, so. The answer would be, it would be yes it'll be yes when it happens.
All right. Any other questions on those?
I think Sue has one.
Can I ask you?
Of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ken and Jen, did you actually submit Article 11?
No. What happened was it was split. I talked to Joanne Duncan this afternoon, and they decided, and I would agree, that that's cleaner, because 2 of these CPA funds are being used, 2 of them town funds are being used.
Or 10?
10 and
No,
11.
10
10
is
and-
CP,
10 is CPA,
yeah.
11 is for
Town.
town funds. Originally, all this was in one article. And because they approached us for all the money, it was determined that we can't pay for all of it. We can only pay for the projects that were originally funded by CPA funds.
Right, so number 11 should be listed as submitted by the town administrator.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not even you guys.
So,
Good point.
my question, and bear with me on asking the question, it's a technical question. Finance Committee can only vote on the articles as they read right here.
But they did it right.
Are you-
It's-
are you-
It says to raise and appropriate. It doesn't say that it doesn't say that
Are you
it's.
seeing what I'm seeing? What I picked up at the door as 2 different articles.
10 and 11.
Right.
Yep.
11 is titled wrong and is submitted wrong, so it's,
Right,
but the actual warrant itself is correct.
okay.
So it's just the
So the title
the
for
housekeeping
The
part.
title
the
is wrong.
title-
title for
These are
11 should be
clerical
something like
errors.
baseline report for
Period. Just-
conservation restriction
Right.
or
Yes,
or the
exactly.
land trust.
Submitted by the town administrator, but, yeah, that's correct.
Okay. I mean, yeah, the verbiage in that warrant looks fine.
And then the earlier Articles 6, 7, and 8, and 9, the annual articles,
Mhm.
if the number is changing, again, that's a technical thing for the Finance Committee, and since you're coming back in May to adjust the number anyway, why aren't you leaving the number as it is so we can vote in the positive?
I'm not sure who put those numbers in, because typically we don't put in numbers because of the confusion factor. And then at town meeting, right before, however that's done, they drop them in. So that the numbers, you see it once. You don't see a corrected number.
Right?
So I'm not real, I do not know why there's.
So this isn't gonna be an issue, because we're gonna put the correct number in it, in our recommendation. And the,
But we have to vote it to the negative.
no,
That's the point.
they gave us the correct number, so we can vote. When we make our motion, we can vote for 53,957.
Yes, but we have to vote on the warrant. And the
No,
warrant
we,
hasn't been-
actually, the warrants are just agenda items. What we vote on are the motions, but we can't, I don't know why they put those numbers in. We've changed these numbers before on past warrant
Because
articles
typically,
and put the correct numbers in.
th-
So I'm
These can be
not
changed.
concerned.
at town meeting, because these are, I don't know if they're clerical errors, they're just updated numbers. Because the numbers, because of the way the
I'm
state
assuming the motion will
reimbursement,
have the
this
correct
stuff.
number.
The
The
motions will have
motion
the
will have the
correct
correct
numbers.
number, but we can vote on these as, in that, the amount that they gave us this evening, even though the warrant article number is wrong. And we don't have to vote in the negative. I don't know why we would vote in the negative anyway, the wrong number.
Only because the number is different from what the number is going to be sent, that's why. Because this is what the printed article will say. This
But
is
we have
different.
changed the numbers so many times in past warrant articles for CPC because they've not always have come in with the correct number.
Yeah, so-
And if you remember a couple of years ago, Anita really messed them up
Yeah,
really
that was
badly,
right.
and we corrected, they gave us the correct numbers here, and we voted on those numbers then.
Yeah, yeah, one year we pushed things off to the next time, but it just left, it caused a ripple of confusion.
It did.
Well, that's
It
because
was a
there was a
ripple of
lot of
confusion that
confusion.
took, so, it took
I
2 years
remember
to
that.
straighten out. We'd prefer not to do that again.
$1,000 each, but
But the
roughly.
reason that happened is because there was a lot of confusion and a lot of things were not being done correctly in the accountant's office, so they asked to push them off until they got it all straightened out.
Right.
That's why we did what we did. This is a totally different story. They have the correct numbers now.
So I think
So-
as long as our recommendations contain
Yes.
the correct numbers, that will be in the motions, and we explain where those numbers come from, which is obviously a discussion with
Right.
you two. I
Right.
And
think,
these aren't an issue of throwing a town budget out of balance, because these are not part of
No,
the town budget.
Correct.
that's right.
So you don't have to.
And the
worry about
motions will
finding
have the
some-
right numbers in them, so what we actually vote,
I just made a big note to send to Joanne, do not include these numbers next year.
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I don't know how, we get other warrant articles from the town administrator with the wrong numbers in the warrants, and then he comes in and gives us the correct number and we vote on it, so it's the same thing.
All right. Any other questions or discussion? All right, thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So next, we're supposed to have Candy, but she's not here.
Is she not coming?
Yep, she'll be here.
Oh, she is coming?
She asking for more money, she better be there.
The last day of the newspaper voting,
It's 8:00.
we have
I said she's asking for money, more money, she better get it.
I'm surprised she isn't.
I know, I agree. Yep, I agree. Right, we didn't get anything done.
We'd have to vote no on every
Everything,
single article,
you
I
know.
know. We still don't have an assistant clerk, do we?
I think this is why she's asking for additional.
No, I think this is because of certification.
Oh,
I think that's how I read the law. If she gets certified, then she gets
Oh,
a
okay.
bonus of $1,000.
that's it, she's asking for.
Is, right now, there's 2 people full-time. One's administrative secretary, the other, of course, is the town.
I know.
The administrative secretary, is the plan to get her certified? Or hire somebody who is certified?
Well, we put money in the budget to hire an assistant town clerk, and that has not happened.
Come on up, Candy.
Hi, Candy.
Doing well, how are you tonight?
Good article, is she in?
23.
There's some packets. Sorry.
That's why. You were 3 minutes late doing this, huh?
No, had to stay open till 8,
Ah,
and then I came up.
You're fending off not only the Russians, but also the Ukrainians now from attacking?
You got it. I think they do more online because nobody came in to see me, so.
All right, so we are talking about Article 23. What did you bring us?
So what I brought you is the top sheet is just a little information on past history, funding needs, impact on what budget year. Then I also gave you a copy of the Mass General Law, the information from like the clerk's page with what the certification is, what it entails, and just anything I could find basically on it. So that's what I have here.
So I understand if you get your certification, then you'll get the $1,000?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
So it looks like doing a little bit of research, there is one for the treasure collector that was passed back in 2002. So this is the same thing just for the town clerk.
So is the motion gonna say
Extra.
1,000? Is that what?
I think so, because that's the highest, and that would be what the same as the treasure collector amount. So I guess we could change it to that too. I'm not sure exactly what they wrote, but I can make that note.
I don't think they put a number
don't think
in,
they
but
put a
I
number.
think 1,000 was,
I'm assuming that would be brought up.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's up to $1,000.
It is, that's
in
what
the
I just
law.
read,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I read.
It's up to
Yep, not more
1,000
than
in the
1,000
law.
Right.
a year, which
Yep,
is, I'm assuming
10%
what
or
it
up to
says.
So
1,000.
if, yeah, so if we put 1,000 in it, if you, doesn't, we don't spend it, we don't spend it all.
Right, up to 1,000, yeah.
Have you hired an assistant town clerk yet?
We offered it to somebody, and Tim is going to speak more on that on Thursday. But because of the salary, we found it very hard to find candidates that were actually prime candidates. It was too low. So he will be discussing how we are hoping to do a small increase to satisfy this person. But it is the final stages. We finally found somebody, so yes.
Somebody good?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Good. It's long in coming.
Oh, you don't even know.
So, oh, I see, you're taking the test in December. Never mind,
Yep.
answer my question.
Yep.
I
December
read.
2020.
She read.
Yes.
She read.
So it's offered twice a year, so July and December. And I figured December, the latest. There are some things I still want to brush up on too, but, by then.
And then do they prorate the annual increase?
That is depending, I believe if you're not a clerk for the full 3 years, they'll prorate it based on your time, but I am in my 3rd year, so it would be just the $1,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could figure that out if I read, but be easier if you check.
It's easier to
don't worry
ask
about
when
it.
you don't have time to read it all.
I know, I tried to just, put it all there, so I'll answer any questions. And basically, some of the funding needs to, there are already things that are in the budget, like taking the classes, which we do anyways. The one-time fund, like I said, the fee would be $50 to do it, and then an application fee of $25. Then additional costs over the years would be $1,000 yearly, and then every 4 years I would have to recertify, which would be a $15 fee. And I have to take 4 classes again, which are built into the budget anyways for taking those classes, so.
Now, town clerks only get one certification, or is there a
No, there's
different-
actually 3.
3?
So I have my CMC right now, which is my certified municipal clerk. And then you have your mass municipal clerk, which I'm working on, and then there's this one.
Okay.
So what's the primary focus of this one?
This one is a more, I guess, rigorous knowledge of many different things from like vital records, like the whole kit and caboodle. So vital records, elections, give me 1 second to find exactly everything it covers. Let's see, town meetings, chapter 48, chapter 41, census, street listing, open meeting law, ethics, public records, and anything else they determine would be pertinent to having the testing as well.
To get certified?
Yep.
You have to study the Athenian dialogues?
That is something that they do. So it's a book that they have that pertains to the job. You read it, and then you meet as a group and discuss it. So I have not taken one yet, but that is an option.
Athenian? If it was Latin, I would be okay, but Greek, sorry.
You should take the class with Candy, Barry.
There we go.
No,
In your free
I've screwed
time.
up enough, I don't think
Yes.
So it looks like the certification is sort of split half and half, kind of experience and education based, and then the exam. You have the other stuff.
So I looked at it, and currently, without knowing all of my class points from attending previous conferences, which we can get, I'm at 72 points. Without those, you need 100. So I'm pretty much met the 100
Got it.
points. so-
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm in huge favor of people getting certifications on highly technical
Yeah.
areas that relate to things like elections and town meeting and whatnot. So, any questions or?
Ukrainian dialect.
Barry's
I'm
not
gonna
happy.
get more info for Barry on that.
Seriously, maybe get him a copy.
Just get them a copy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just get him a copy.
They'll tell us all about it
Yeah.
next meeting.
Yes.
Just, it's almost like one of these, let's throw in a sentence and see if anybody reads it, and then we'll find out.
Yep.
You read it.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Candy.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks for the information,
Oh,
Candy.
you're welcome.
Interesting.
Next, we have CIPC bylaw. So Peter Carlson's supposed to come up.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. They have a
You
meeting
can
right
text
now.
him to let him know
He's
that
in the
we're
middle
ready.
of the meeting. I'll just let him know.
So what's in that special book? Athenian,
Athenian dialects, I just
Probably
picture
all in Greek,
Socrates
too.
talking to Plato, or,
probably all in Greek, too.
Oh, okay.
To him further.
I haven't.
Okay.
That's fine.
He said it was gonna be a long meeting, so we thought to.
Athenian
So this
dialogues.
is their system.
All right. That's great.
I
Okay.
learned I can talk to my,
City Clerks Association
I
of
would think they get
California,
20 points just for
dialogues
the
are
Athenian.
conversations in which clerks share
Seriously.
their experience and understanding as it relates to the ideas of the author and the relevance of those ideas to their public leadership role. The premise of the Athenian leadership dialogue is the idea that clerks are leaders in very profound yet subtle ways.
It's not really subtle.
the Athenian leadership
Subtle
dialogues,
ways.
so.
It's a leadership thing.
All right. Let's move on if Peter's not going to be here. So I actually, Sue, didn't understand when I insisted that we include the bylaw in the warrant article, that was different than the motion. So you have a whole copy of the bylaw.
But they need to see
the
that
warrant.
bylaws, all the bylaws go into warrant articles. And it should have been there anyway.
So Matt, your
Uh,
goal is to create the bylaw that will establish or reestablish the committee. But are you going to then drive the committee and have meetings and things like that, or how's that?
So
going?
just to be clear, it wasn't my goal. We got a committee together and the committee decided that this was the bylaw that we wanted to go forward with.
Okay,
So the basic intention of it, yeah, was to reestablish CIPC with a slightly different charge, was
Mhm.
this main part of it. And that new charge has different features to it. We can talk through some of the benefits of the new charge, but yeah, I would, I'd like to be on CIPC, obviously, because it's something that's important to me. I think it's a really valuable part of our town finances, and it's something that it needs some attention. And I have some serious concerns about how we do our capital planning in
Right.
town. The kind of long-term viability of our funding sources, so the bylaw addresses some of that. But,
Okay.
what the bylaw committee tried to do was to give the new CIPC the right charge and to outline the bare minimum structural elements of the process and then to give CIPC the authority to then pursue its own policies and its own actual processes relative to the budget and how it reports to the town administrator and finance committee and the select board. So the committee felt like it was really important not to include a lot of those process elements in the actual bylaw, but to give CIPC the charge and the authority to go and pursue those things on their own. So there's going to be a fair amount of work in the early days if this bylaw passes for CIPC to establish itself in its new way of working. It has a broader perspective on capital spending, so it should be looking at all of the capital spending in town, so roads and land transfers,
Land acquisitions.
yep. Anything that would come out of CPC that would qualify as capital spending. So it's a good thing that it would have that additional visibility, but also we would have to establish working practices to get that information. There would be a slightly different process for some of these committees to be, bringing projects forward. There would be a slightly different process for that.
Okay.
So,
Since we're here.
do you guys have some questions? Yeah, come on up.
Because we're concerned that we don't work this way, and this is gonna totally throw off any projects that we might have, all of our projects.
Okay, well, I guess, yeah, so,
So I think we would like, if
We
this
have
is
some-
to
we
be
have some questions.
a bylaw, to have CPA-type projects excluded, because we can never meet any of these timelines for any of our projects.
okay,
Because the way our schedule is now, town meeting is in October.
yep,
Our applications are due in July. We review them and have a public hearing in August. September 1st, we submit that to the town administrator to be included on the warrant within the 45 days.
sure.
So, and it looks like this is wanting it a year in advance and looking
So,
out
yeah.
5 years.
We don't do anything in a year in
And everything
advance.
is within a 6-month window.
So all we would ask is that any request to do capital spending would be submitted to the town administrator by September 1st, which you guys are already doing,
Right.
to be included in the capital plan.
But this
But we
isn't
don't- we
part of
don't-
the
we never
capital
plan
plan.
things a year. There's no concept of planning things a year and 5 years in advance in the realm of the CPA. There's no 1 year, there's no 5 years.
Because if somebody wants to buy land, the land is for sale, they've pulled it out of 61A.
Yep.
You have
Weeks.
60 days to wheel and
Understood.
deal.
So we would still ask to get those requests in, that you're
In
providing
arrears?
to Tim
In arrears?
anyways, right?
Are you asking for them in arrears?
But it
after
wouldn't be,
happens?
it wouldn't be in arrears, it would be along the lines of the process that you guys already do. The capital budget is Tim's ultimately.
But this is
I understand that
this
this
is
isn't,
Tim's money, this is our
I
money.
understand that this
and
isn't
they
part of the
don't-
capital budget.
Yeah, CPA purchases are not done in the capital budget framework.
Understood, yep. So there's gonna be lots of things like this that aren't included
And
in
so
the
that,
capital
so
budget.
it doesn't apply, this bylaw doesn't apply to capital expenditures that are done outside the budget process?
We would ask for the request forms so that we could review the capital spending.
Does that say, is that specified in the bylaws?
It is, yep, everything's laid out in the bylaw.
Where's that?
So it's there, I saw it, but does that mean
And
we're
this,
submitting that, or the applicant to us is submitting 2 applications, one to us and one to you?
Just to Tim. Everything goes to Tim, and then Tim gives us a capital package that then we review throughout the year. It's gonna be a living document that changes throughout the year. And it's great that you guys have your own funding source, but it's just to give a very broad picture for the whole town to see. That this is, and you guys have quick projects, that's great, but it still will just kind of go into this living document.
So the Community Preservation Act in the Commonwealth is very specific on how the CPA organizations spend money. And the Grafton CPA bylaws are equally specific on the process for grants coming forward, grants being approved, and grants going to town meeting. And that process has worked exceedingly well for 19 years. And it's shown that it can be accurate, it can be timely, and it follows the processes as specified. What is the value add that the capital planning committee can add to that process?
So it would be included in the overall capital plan, which would include all of the
So why is
other.
that an added value?
So that the town could see all of the capital spending in aggregate across the whole budget.
Well, they can certainly see that in arrears after the projects go forward or don't go forward with the current procedures.
They can, but they're not seeing it alongside all of the other capital spending in town.
That's because the money's coming from a different source.
Right, but
The money comes from the source contemplated by the Community Preservation Act, separate from town money.
Yep.
Taxes are not,
My
additional taxes are not required.
Right. It's not separate from town money in the sense that we all pay our taxes and it comes out of our tax bill, right? So the
That's right.
idea
That's-
is
so
that
that's-
CIPC would have a holistic view of all of the capital spending, including,
That's-
things
that's
that are
not-
funded by
That's not a
CPC.
requirement for CPA purposes.
But
The CPA is not concerned whether the town needs a new fire truck. That's a different thing.
I
And so
understand that.
adding it to the list has no additional value.
my concern is the bylaw as written, is we can never, it says that we're submitting this by August 15th for consideration of the capital budget for the following fiscal year.
We have we go 2 times per year.
We will have already August 15th, which we won't meet, even if we give it to Tim by September 1st. You're saying it's for in the following year. We're gonna be voting on it in October, and then we're gonna vote again on a whole different set of projects, whether we get them or not, in May. So we will never meet these deadlines.
For any project.
Never. Because you're saying you want it September 1st for the following year. We don't know September 1st what we're doing. the
But your
following-
requests won't go into the capital budget, they'll go into the capital plan.
What you're looking at is an overall plan. And they won't be making any, you won't be making any
But we will
decisions,
have already
because they're
spent
under.
all this. I mean,
I understand that.
are you saying that you can veto what, I think
No,
that's our
no,
other big
This is
concern.
100% advisory, so we don't get a vote on what projects move forward. The idea is that we have a capital plan which shows all of the capital spending in town, which this would qualify as, and that we can be reporting to the town administrator, finance committee, and the select board all of the projects that qualify as capital.
Because
That's
we're-
it.
But we're
But-
violating your rules, just as long as you know that.
You're not violating our rule,
We're
actually.
we're missing your deadlines.
Well, I wouldn't,
You come with your own funding, so it's not like we would have to find money for you. You have your own money. We're, like he's saying,
I'm
the
just saying
whole
if-
five-year
If you're
plan.
expecting stuff by these certain dates, ain't gonna happen. It just, because that's.
we would
we're-
just ask
We're a year
that,
ahead of you.
we would just ask that you, because Tim has a responsibility under this bylaw to package it all together and to give it to us, that you can get Tim the information that he needs to be able to do that work.
Will it not be confusing, though, because these are coming from two different pots of money? I can see what you're saying is, this is the list that we want to do for the next 5 years, or that we're gonna do in the next 5 years. This is what we're gonna do the coming year. And you're gonna come up with a list of, we have $1 million to spend, and it's gonna be $1,250,000 because we have $250,000 projects. So I think that's gonna be confusing to people, because you're mixing apples and oranges. I don't know how you show the different funding sources and not make it confusing, unless you just put us at the bottom, have section A, town money, section B, CPA money.
So we already have different funding sources.
Right, but it's,
It sounds like
accounting wise,
it-
it's gonna be confusing, cause
If the objective is to, give clarity to what's happening in the town, then including CPA budgets alongside the capital plans that you have, for information purposes, could make sense for that objective. But
That's
any
all it is.
A priori approvals don't make sense in in this case. You just said there was no approval anyway.
Right.
If there's no approval, then I struggle to see the value add.
So there is an approval. There's a plan, that's a 5-year plan that goes to the town administrator and the select board that can then be used to move forward to put together the capital budget, but it also would include spending from CPC. So we would segregate that out as a separate piece to say this is what's being delivered by CPC, along with all of the other capital spending in town from all of the various sources.
But the CPA committee has very little visibility of what's going to happen 6 months out. Next to zero, almost no visibility. And all the projects that come through in a time span on 6-month cycles.
And we're actually hoping to I personally am hoping to change that to be that we only have one.
But right now,
application
there's
process.
2 6-month cycles, and no one knows what's gonna be in the next one. There might be, some people might have some guesses, but they're not clear at all. So nobody knows what's gonna happen beyond the 6-month cycle. We didn't know what was gonna be in this one until a month ago.
Well,
Truly, we didn't know.
True.
People came, they made presentations, we sent them back. In many cases, they came back again, new one showed up, and it all came together about a month ago. And we
Jen.
vote on the proposals. We grant most of them, but not all of them. And the ones that make it through get on the warrant, and you see that every 6 months. And it doesn't make any sense to have an annual cycle
Sure.
on these projects.
Okay.
Just as long as you know that's how our timing is, just so you, that's.
And the warrant talks about submitted by departments, and the CPA is not a department. So, on the face of it, perhaps the CPA is not included anyway, and all this discussion is moot.
Okay, well, I would say that the definition of capital includes,
But the division of department is also, is the key one. It says all the departments do this and they do that. And it doesn't say anything about independent committees.
And I think he's making a good point. They aren't departments. But I think when you publish your capital overall plan, you could just put them on there separately as that this is what the CPC has done on capital projects. Because they really aren't a department. They are under the state regulations and regs of everything that has to be done. So I agree, they're not gonna be able to make your deadlines, but if you want to just be able to show the town, these are all the capital projects that were done for this year, and just publish them with, like that, I can see them submitting that to you.
And that's something we actually have to do September 15th of each year,
To the state.
which we can submit that same document that shows all the expenditures that we've made in the previous
That's all you really want.
fiscal year.
yeah,
But so that's gonna be active.
absolutely. All we want is a comprehensive view
Right.
And
of all the
that's-
capital spend. So
That's
we're
the
happy to,
legal accounting for what.
we're happy to just include that in our plan.
And
And
we
that-
have to do that to get our state match. If we
Right.
don't do that, you don't get your state match.
So they will kind of be a little behind,
It was fine.
but that's okay. I mean, September 15th, because they will be making decisions throughout the year as to what their projects are going to be. But at least they can give you a list on September
As long as
15th.
you're wanting a
Of what-
list,
yeah, what
that's
they
all you're
were.
needing, is a list
Yeah.
of what we do. I think that's, and I'll ask Joanne to make sure that that gets to them.
That's workable.
That's what you're looking for, and that's the official list.
It is, because it's unlikely that we would have an opinion on the value of a CPC project. That's,
Because finance committee actually, you guys.
You guys
Get
discuss every one.
absolutely.
Right.
Is there a reason it's September 1st for all the departments? Does that have to do with anything?
So it has to do with backing into Tim's commitment based on the charter. So his commitment is to produce the capital budget on early February.
Yep.
So that gives CPC, it gives Tim enough time to package everything, to get it to CIPC, and then CIPC enough time to then put the 5-year plan together and submit it to the TA and the select board. And in that 5-year plan, we would have a one-year capital budget recommendation that hopefully we've had those discussions with Tim and everybody's in agreement, so that he just basically can take that capital budget and put it into the overall budget. So it should be less work for Tim.
Yeah. So
I
these
think-
guys gave us, or gave you, or the CIPC on the 15th or whenever, they've
Yeah, that would be fine.
finalized their
So-
list.
That would be
You could just
absolutely
put it in
fine.
there.
And I think to clarify that point, we can put that in the recommendation, that the CPC would submit a list of their capital on September 15th, so the town will know what their money was spent on. Because they really are two different sources, but it would be nice to see all of the capital items in
And
one
we're
what
big
this
picture.
does.
backward-looking, you're forward-looking.
Yes,
And you're just gonna put our list on, include it with your list.
That's right.
This report, the way I understand it, just answers the question, what are all the capital projects in
Right.
town? Whether
Right.
that's
Right.
CPA money, mostly town
Right.
money.
but I can understand why they don't want the town to
Yeah,
be
totally.
confused that they're two funding
Yep,
sources.
because we always have all those people that,
After you guys do a project, who maintains them?
Depends on who owns the project.
So
We
could it be
cannot.
possible that the town would have to maintain some of your projects and then it becomes a capital project that would have to be on our radar?
An example where this is a relevant question is a recreation project. Fisherville, that pond, we did that Fisherville Pond, there's a little, like a peninsula in the,
The Riverwalk,
no, the one,
well, how about Silver
remember
Lake Beach with?
the one
they
behind the
added
apartment building.
amenities?
It's surrounded by Fisherville, that pond.
Oh, Riverside Park.
Riverside Park. Yeah, Riverside Park. The town owned the property, and, didn't they? The town owned the
Right,
property.
and
It
we
was
just
it was a dumping ground. It
Mm-hmm.
was I don't know, it's like, sand and salt and stuff stacked up there. But it was surrounded by the lake, and the CPA funded the conversion of that piece of derelict property into a beautiful park with a soccer field and a few, playground and a few other buildings and a boat launch. And that was done by CPA funds, to do that reclamation. But once that was done, the town maintains the park in its own budget. And that
Because
answers your
we
question.
cannot pay for,
The
repairs
CPA
and
doesn't allow
maintenance.
paying for
Yeah.
maintenance,
Got it.
but it created that park.
so that
Yep.
would come out of Jen's budget, just like Silver Lake Beach, we paid for the amenities, or we pay for the initial, weed barrier. We can't pay for it to be taken out, put back in every year and cleaned and all those, because we paid for the capital one time.
Right. Yeah, we had that discussion about the pavers on the common, right?
Right.
That you guys are gonna install them, and
Right,
they're
but
gonna
the
be
town-
maintained by the town.
It's, it's like you buy your car, you've gotta maintain.
If they put them in really well the first time, it won't cost that much over the years.
There are lots of examples of them lasting 100 years, yeah, absolutely.
watch out for the tree roots, though.
I was just at BC and they got brick sidewalks all over the place, so.
Let's not have the town meeting all over again, please.
We okay?
Does that help to give you some context as to what CIPC is after? And
Yeah, I think so. We just need to understand the issues of timing.
absolutely. And as I said earlier, there are some mechanical parts of it that we're gonna have to kind of figure out, they're not figured out yet. So CIPC could, easily have a discussion with you guys and just write a policy that says, look, we don't need their information, or maybe we need their information in a slightly different manner as other people, but we still want to include it in our 5-year plan.
Yeah, I think that the Community Preservation Committee could report anything you need to report.
It sounds like you
Well,
guys
to
are already
the
doing it.
Capital Planning Committee. Particularly if it certainly aligns with the report that's already being written for the Commonwealth.
Right.
Copy paste.
All right, thanks.
And it's all on that website, so if you wanna see the whole state, what everybody's done, or I think you can, you can go draft it and see what we've done from day one, all the projects, so. It's not terribly user-friendly, cause I've done it one year, had to input the stuff, but, it's there, so you can see all the things we've done, cause you kinda forget, and it is amazing how much that CPA has been able to do in Grafton.
It's amazing, and thank God we have it. It's great to just have this completely separate source for those type of projects, because otherwise
After the
it'd be
meeting
really tough to get them done.
Thursday, if we'd had the first, when we passed this, if we'd gone for 3%, we'd be getting so much money.
Yeah, it would be nice.
We've not suffered from not enough
We've
money.
gotten money, but
We've-
we've gotten,
we've
we could
not-
have gotten a lot more. Upton got 3%, so
They
kinda
did.
makes you jealous that they
But-
did it. when we
Nah,
didn't.
not me. I think the 1.5% was perfect.
Wow.
Well, probably
The town
made
has
the
had
chance
enough
of
money
it
to
getting
do what it
passed
wanted to
Right
do.
now,
higher.
we could go back and we've thought about that many times, and every time this is not the time to do that.
I wouldn't do it.
I think
No,
that'd be
no,
a
no.
tough sell.
We missed the
Yeah.
window of doing
Yeah.
that.
You know, there's enough money to do what the town needs to do.
Does that satisfy your concerns?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Ken, where was that park you were talking about? That
It's called Riverside Park.
Behind the Riverside
You know where the golf course is?
which one? The Highfields?
Highfield.
Highfields. If you're on Providence Road, heading south past Highfields,
Yeah.
it's on your right.
Okay.
There's a sign with a stone pillar. There's a CPA standard.
The sign is more
Sign there.
visible if you're driving up from the south.
Yeah.
There's some apartment houses or condos down
Yep,
there
right in
on the
front of it.
river.
That's how
on your
you
right.
get into it.
As
is
you
that
head south.
There's a big curve in the road.
Got it.
You drive
Beautiful.
down past the condos.
Yeah, I wanna
and
go
it's
check it
right
out.
there. It's a nice park.
My son played soccer there for years.
Nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And the people fish there all the time. They launch their little fishing boats and go out and fish. It's a great park.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
It's a green sign with like different ball, like soccer ball, basketball, you'll see it, it's pretty, once you know you're looking for it, you'll see it.
Yeah.
So, any other questions about the CIPC bylaw?
No, I thought it was pretty comprehensive for what you put together, but, what we see here is an outline, but things will be more in depth when you develop policies, though.
That's right. Yep.
Matt, could you point out like kind of some of the language, or Colleen too, where it's like beefier than what is in place now? Or more specific, or whatever you were looking for, like where are the areas that we really needed this?
So the way it works now is CIPC gets a list from the town administrator in sometime in February. It's almost like two lists, a short list of what he's gonna fund this year.
Yep.
And we just say yes or no, and then a longer list of projects going out 5 years, but no real plan, and then no continuity from next year. Where did the stuff that didn't get funded, why isn't it there, and where did it go? And it just needed more comprehensive plan and
Yep.
to figure it out, I suppose.
Currently, we don't have much of a bylaw.
Do we even have one?
There's
Do we
no
have-
bylaw.
There is no bylaw, so this
the-
is.
So
yeah.
CIPC's charge comes from the select board today. One of the significant limitations of the current charge is that CIPC only reviews projects that are put forth by the town administrator.
Whereas
So-
you're getting
Everything.
departments. too,
Yeah, so in the bylaw created CIPC, all of the requests get packaged by Tim, regardless of whether he wants to fund those in the following year. They all get moved forward to CIPC for consideration. And at that point, you know, the vision is that there can be discussions to get to that capital budget, but it's actually a more visible decision-making and prioritization process for all of the capital requests, as opposed to now, Tim has already had all those discussions with all the requesters, made all of the decisions, and passed along the projects that he wants to fund in the following year capital budget, and CIPC doesn't have visibility of, and nor does the public have any visibility of those discussions about priorities and funding sources and all of that. So, so it gives you greater visibility of all of it. It gives you more transparency in terms of the decision-making process, and it also gives the whole process more time, where CIPC gets a very short amount of time right now to actually vet the short list. And we, quite frankly, we don't even get today the actual request forms that justify the projects that are, we just get the list.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to speak for the future CIPC, but I would like to see more of a plan and less of a list in terms of the 5-year plan. Because if you look at the 5-year plan today, it has FY 2020 funded at, the projects that'll be delivered are about a little under $1 million, which is historically about what we funded for capital every year. As soon as you go to the next year, it has 2 million and then 3 million and then $1.5 million and.
But then every year, everything ends up being $1 million. So where are those?
But
projects
every
at?
year it ends up being $1 million. So at what point do you move those projects and actually get them done? So it's not actually a plan, the 5-year plan. It's just a list of things that we could potentially do, but ultimately that we're never gonna get around to. So my interest is in trying to actually have a more accurate plan to say, look, we've got roofs that actually, they're gonna need to be replaced this year, whatever that year is, 2022, 2023, and that we, in the budget projections, put the bonds and the bond obligations that are gonna be needed to pay for those roofs in the actual projections, because we know those roofs are gonna, because otherwise we're gonna end up where we do sometimes, which is you go to town meeting and you go, well, we have to do this roof because it's leaking really bad and it's gonna cost us $1.5 million, and so now you have people saying, well, you know, where did this come from?
Yep. When in
When we
reality,
knew it was happening.
Knew it was
Like,
gonna happen.
very little on capital should be a surprise.
So for funding sources, you're gonna be looking at free cash, chapter 90 monies, bonds or bans,
Yep.
and maybe some grants that you can apply for?
Some grants, there are some projects that are being delivered out of the operational budget as well, so, the schools did some traffic redirection, out of their operational budget. Those kind of projects, we would like to see come before CIPC to say, okay, you're looking at using some operational funds, for a capital project, does that make sense?
Okay.
How much of those projects are being moved into the operational budgets? Because the capital budget's being squeezed, because we have a smaller and smaller
Right.
percentage of free cash. You know, it's all of the, it's a plan. It's actually somebody looking at it and considering the long-term health of our capital planning and funding strategy. And it's just not being done now.
We've asked for many years.
That's what we've wanted for a
Yep.
long time.
Those were some good questions, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't happy, but hopefully he's.
I think they're satisfied knowing they
No, I
can
think
just
they are
submit
now.
a list
Just
to
submit a
you and
list. It's not like you're asking, it's not like you're gonna say yes or no.
That's right.
I think.
they'll just submit a list to you on September 15th
Right.
and let you know
Which is
all
fine.
the capital that they've done.
I think it's important for people to understand where their tax dollar is going.
I
And
agree.
Oh, I
packaging it
understand
together
that.
in a
No,
way
I
that,
agree.
here's all the capital spending. It's just another way to look at the information,
Mhm.
you know?
I completely.
And I
agree.
look at some of the other towns, they've got really good, very detailed capital plans and different ways to look at the spending on capital, all of the funding sources and what's being delivered, the value that's being delivered out of the capital programs, all of that. We don't have as much of that. Tim has a pretty lengthy document, which is a capital plan. And it has some information in there, but it's very factual and it's not, he doesn't take the data which says, here's how much free cash we had over time. You can see the trend line going down
Well, yeah,
over time, but he doesn't then make a statement about what that means to the actual funding of capital, just as one example. So his capital plan has lots of data in there, but it's not interpreted in a way that you can understand what's
Why.
actually happening.
Mhm,
What
okay.
do these trends mean versus just putting the numbers there?
Right.
So
we understand it, but they don't understand it.
I don't think your average person would really understand.
No, that's
Right.
what I'm saying, they don't.
So
And they don't
having
see
some
the trend going
interpretation.
down either.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't see that, so. But-
Because my concern is that this, the way we do capital isn't sustainable, so, but we're not at the point where it's a crisis yet. And now is the time to do the planning to get us to a point where we don't have to be in a crisis, right?
I'm not so, we're this close.
It's really close, but
It
we're.
is really close.
We're not quite there yet, but with all of the roofs and the HVAC systems and the fields and all the other things piling on, if we're not honest with when those things need to happen and how we're gonna fund them, it will become a crisis soon,
Mhm.
so. That's where I'm at. Okay.
Close the public
Close the
hearing.
public hearing.
You have a motion for that?
I do.
All right, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second?
Motion's been made and
What did you
seconded.
just move?
Close the motion, the,
You
public
want to
hearing.
continue tomorrow night.
Oh, good point. Continue.
I rescind my second.
We're not closing, we're continuing.
I make a motion to continue the public hearing tomorrow night at 7 o'clock in conference room F.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any question, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, let's see, what else do we have?
You have a bill?
We do have a bill. This is for printing in the amount of
Nameplate for Colleen.
Ooh, sorry.
$19.
Wow, you're getting expensive. Mine
know.
costs what,
Nancy,
12 bucks, or maybe 10 bucks when I first started.
Could have gotten a shorter last name, sorry.
You could have.
can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the bill for Colleen's nameplate.
Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Alright.
Motion carries. All right.
Sorry, just up top.
All right, so next is a discussion about the process we're going to use for putting our recommendations together. Oh, what is that?
What's IBA?
Oh, I skipped
IBA.
an agenda item.
Voting
What is IBA?
What's that?
That's the company that made the
The bill.
nameplate sign.
Oh,
Oh,
that's IBA.
So Sue, do we have to reopen the meeting to continue discussion about any of the warrant articles?
no,
No.
no.
Okay.
No one is,
There is no one, there's no
No one
citizen
here.
present, so we close the hearing and it can, thank you. And
Okay.
it can stay closed, so we can discuss, the articles amongst, the committee.
Okay. Then why don't we do that?
Are we only discussing the ones we've reviewed tonight? Is that the deal?
well, we can assign all of them if we.
So I think we should just look at them one by one. If there's any that we could vote on and assign recommendations for tonight, I think we should just do that. Otherwise, we should identify any that require additional input.
Tim is coming Thursday for sure.
Yes.
Coming Thursday, okay.
So most of the, 1 through 4 is gonna be him. Although,
Yeah, we don't have any numbers for him.
yeah, because we don't know that 4 is 10,000, do we? Or has it always been 10,000? I don't remember.
No, all of, anything that I have written down was the, from
Last year? Okay, that's what I thought.
Just to give you a format.
Okay.
Well, we could start voting on Article 5.
Yep.
I move we recommend passage of Article 5 as presented
Second.
in the amount of $45,000.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. So, let's see, and should we assign the recommendations now?
That one I don't think you need, unless you want more detail.
What?
Well,
Unless
Sue,
you want
Sue
more
has
detail.
already written most of the recommendations, so.
I had put together the standard ones or ones that we have seen before, and, just to move the process along, if you want it amended, or we can reassign it certainly.
So we wanted to put the new number in, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it should say warrant Article 5.
Yep.
Not
Thank
4.
you.
Yep.
Ooh, can I get a point?
It's really only restoring the interior this time. So, for designs.
Only designing it,
Yeah, they're designing.
then they're gonna restore it. And then they'll put up the golden arches.
I hope so.
and, you know, and the Ferris wheel and
And the cigarette stand.
Yeah, as I say, cigarette and liquor. All right, so that one's fine.
All right, Article 6.
And we approve recommend Article 6 as presented.
Well, no, you have to change the amount.
Oh, in the amount of $53,957. Thank you.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
You're on a roll.
I move that we recommend.
Small point on Article 6, it's Community Preservation Act funds for Affordable Housing Trust Reserve.
No.
No,
I think they said it goes in the trust at the end of the year.
That's right, goes into the reserve.
This is just for
Yeah,
this
okay.
year. At the end
Yeah.
of the
Gotcha.
year, it rolls over to
Thank
there.
you.
I move that we recommend passage of Article 7 in the amount of $53,957.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I move that we recommend Article 8 in the amount of $53,957.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I move that we recommend passage of Article 8 in the amount of $53,957.
Second.
Didn't you just say that?
We just did that,
Yeah, I
you're
think
on,
you
you're
did.
on 9.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was reading the recommendation.
Yeah.
Article 9, I move that we recommend passage of Article 9 in the amount of $273,750.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Around 11, right?
Yeah. 10.
10.
10.
I move that we recommend passage of Article 10 as presented in the amount of $4,000.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
We're doing this one because it's a requirement for conservation restricted land.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
So would we want to say that in the recommendation?
Yes.
Are you gonna write that?
Sounds like it.
I think it just needs to be adjusted.
That's the last time I opened mine. You want me to write that? Okay.
Yeah, why don't
Yes.
you go ahead and write that, Barry?
Please.
Why don't you write both? Because
Yeah, write both of
Yeah,
them.
one is CPA funds and one is raise and appropriate.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Are we on 11 now?
Mhm.
I move that we recommend passage of Article 11 in the amount of $4,000 as presented.
Even though, is it still submitted by CPC or submitted by the town
No, it's
administrator?
submitted by town administrator, but that
That doesn't matter.
that
Okay.
doesn't have to go on the recommendation.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
So am I
Aye.
tagged with this one also?
Yes.
Did we have
Motion
to
carries.
tag people for the other ones, or is it that just Sue?
No, I think she just did those.
When you're ready, if you don't have to do it today, but it'll happen, Eric.
No, but he's asking if the ones we just approved are going to be tagged by us, but they're not because you already did them.
Yeah.
That's what
Yep.
I was talking about like 6, 7, 8.
Nope.
Article 12, DPW is coming in tomorrow night.
More question, the Weber property is Keith Hill area or North Street area?
The Weber property is,
He
By
said
the,
two
isn't that by the
things.
school?
it's over,
Isn't that one by the school?
what is the road over there? I'm trying to
If
think
it's
of it.
over by the school, then it's North Street. If it's,
No, I think
No, no,
it's
no.
if it's
by-
over by the road, it's Keith Hill.
That's it, Keith Hill.
It's Keith Hill,
Yep.
okay.
Weber?
'Cause he
I don't
said
Thought it
think so.
was.
No. Weber property's in North Grafton
North Grafton, right, gotcha.
So that's behind the school. That's the one.
by
North.
north.
Yeah.
Check on the
North
map.
Street,
Just go to
Elementary.
assessor's office and check, go online and check.
no, it's North Street.
Everybody knows where the Weber property is.
I know
so.
that.
Okay.
All right.
Article 13. Do we know if this amount is, well, it is.
It is.
It's ours.
I move that we recommend passage of Article 13 in the amount of $1,500,000 as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry, we passed over 12.
We
Because
have
they haven't come
Because
there
they're
yet.
coming tomorrow
I
night.
got you.
any further discussion?
when we did the override, we said 2 million for roads, 1.5 million for school.
Yep.
Now we're saying that the 1.5 million for the schools is exhausted, but the 2 million for the roads stays?
Sorry, I think it was the
No, I
reverse.
think it was the reverse.
It
Reverse.
was million
It was the reverse. It was always 1.5 million for the roads. It has
Right.
not changed.
So the 2 million for the schools is exhausted, but the 1.5 million for the roads stays?
Because they've only used 1.5 every year.
Correct.
Yeah,
Right. But they only use 2 million for the schools each year.
Right, but the school's expenses went up,
Yes.
right, using up the
Okay,
extra.
so we're
levy
keeping this
capacity.
fixed and just gonna drive it out
yes.
as if we, okay.
So the intention of this road stabilization program was to improve the pavement condition
Right.
across town.
Oh, understood.
And the idea was that the 1.5 million would get us to that point where the road maintenance was good enough so that we would be able to save money over time, essentially not having to do kind of maintaining the roads with preventative maintenance rather than having to rip up and replace.
And the school money was only for 5 years anyway.
Right.
It
Because
was
they knew they
designated
were
that
gonna
way,
use
okay.
it.
So the road stabilization is in perpetuity?
There's
So 1.5 million
Well,
gets
it's really, it really can't fix much anymore, but,
No, it's not really.
Well-
you know,
Doesn't
a
go very
million
far.
five doesn't fix a lot anymore, but.
yes,
It
But
fixes,
there are
it fixes more than the 1.5 million we get from the state.
Correct.
Right, right.
If that's what you're thinking, Barry, because you get 500,000 from the state, so they do 2 million for the roads.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
1.5 is
No,
for
I
roads.
was, my original question stands in that the argument is that the school money now is exhausted and
Yes,
Yes,
blah, 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 but the roads will continue.
correct.
I like the idea of continuing
Mhm.
designated funding, don't touch it, it's only for those.
Correct.
And chapter 90 from the state is nice if you spend that 500,000 million for a road project or road-related project, then yes, the state will give you that money back. So that's the way it goes, that's fine.
so Article 14, we need to wait for a number.
For what? For 14?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wait, did we
We
vote on
didn't vote.
13?
Did we didn't vo- I thought we voted.
Oh, did we vote on Article?
We did not vote on 13.
My
Um,
motion I made.
Any
I know.
further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Ooh, gotta get a 2/3 vote on that, huh?
Yes, that's a stabilization.
All right.
14 and 15.
Move them
were-
trees.
I don't know anything about Article 15. Tim will have to explain.
Did we do 14? I'm sorry.
No, we're not doing it
No, we're
yet.
not doing
We
14,
need
we don't have a
money.
number for it, we don't know what it's,
Article 15, the select board is supposed to be voting on it this evening
Oh.
for road acceptance.
So we don't know that yet. I mean, we could, but we don't know that yet. We'll wait. Aggregation.
do we know if they accepted it, though?
I do not know. I'm assuming so, but Becca will have it for Thursday.
By accepting this roadway, do we also accept the hydrants?
No,
Separate.
those are
That's separate.
separate.
Separate article.
I like to ask that. Oh, I wondered if you don't accept the hydrants. what happens?
All right, so we'll wait on those.
14 and 15 leave alone.
20,
Did we vote on 1 through 4?
No, because he's coming in, and then numbers might change depending on, you never know.
Oh, okay, so we're just
So I
hitting the
think
ones where we
16,
have-
17, 18, 19, we have to wait for Tim.
Yeah.
Article 20, though,
16, we're not touching, 17, we're not touching.
Oh, 18 or 19 now. I would just wait. I would wait on those.
Oh, boy,
I move
18
that-
and 19, yikes.
Yeah.
Article 20, I move that we recommend passage Article 20 as presented.
Second.
I think we should have a full formal presentation on that.
Oh, Barry.
No. 3 years
Already
from now,
did.
Barry.
Got it. Okay. Motion's been made or seconded. Any additional discussion?
Somebody stretched it out to 3.
Hearing none, all in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
Article 21, I move that we recommend passage of Article 21 as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion
Nice
carries.
job, Barry.
Look at that, I got 3.
I move that we recommend passage of Article 22 as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Better than having the T name in
That's right.
All in favor?
I think I should write that recommendation, and I
Motion
think I
carries.
should put a whole paragraph in explaining why
No,
we're
the
doing
recommendation's good, but move on.
No, we're fine.
it. Move on, move on, move on.
Article 23, I move that we recommend passage of Article 23 in the amount of up to $1,000,
All of that
Or
work
not
and only
exceeding.
$1,000, huh?
Not to exceed.
not to exceed $1,000.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll write that one.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We don't have to wait for Peter, right?
No, but
You've
No.
answered all our questions. All right. Article 24, I move that we recommend passage of Article 24 as presented.
I'll
Second.
pull a Barry here.
Does
point
this-
out that at the end of paragraph 1, fill
Where are
vacant,
we?
fill vacants for 24,
right here, fill
whatever it
vacancies.
is.
Yeah.
Just for a second, Eric, was that seconded?
I made a motion. Did anyone second my
Second,
motion?
Colleen
Okay.
did. Thank you. Sorry, Eric.
Motion's been
Go
made and
ahead, Eric.
So
seconded.
under establishment and
Yep.
membership, the last sentence says, fill vacancy, any vacancies shall be filled in the same manner as the original appointment and persons appointed to fill vacancies shall serve for the remainder of
Oh, it's
his
doubled.
predecessor's term of office. That's not correct. His or her. They,
They,
them, right?
The.
Yes.
of the.
There we go. Can we change that? How do we do that?
Probably no.
We can ask the clerk to change the wording on that.
Okay.
Can you?
Yep.
The articles, the
On town
warrant,
meeting floor.
on town meeting
Nope,
floor, you have to
nope.
admit.
In the actual bylaw, when she puts it in, she inserts the bylaw, she can make minor changes.
She
Uh,
can?
Yep, she can.
Well, then
So
how
for
come we were always
example,
going
like
to town
these-
meeting to make minor changes on other bylaws?
Because this hasn't happened yet.
No, it's already been signed. It's not supposed to be altered unless, it's just not supposed to be altered.
What Matt is saying, though, is that the town clerk can make that minor change on a bylaw.
When
Go
she puts
for
it
it.
in.
Yeah, they
When
can.
it's
So
after it's voted on.
after it's voted on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it doesn't have any,
If it
Significant.
doesn't have a
Yeah.
material impact.
No,
Doesn't,
right,
so Howard changed it.
right.
so it's a typo technically.
Yes.
That's right.
All
So
right.
like all the numbering and all
Yep.
that, like she's gonna have to fit it into the actual bylaw structure.
Okay.
She can renumber and,
Yeah.
you know, indent
Do we have
and,
a second on this?
so I would
Yes,
chalk
I
that up to
second.
the same thing. So a motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
You're gonna write the recommendation or anything, or not?
Is he allowed? Is it,
What did you ask, Barry?
who's gonna write the
Who's gonna-
recommendation?
Oh,
Colleen.
Yeah,
Colleen.
I'm happy to write it, it doesn't matter.
all right.
Okay.
Since you know all about it.
25. What do we think?
Can we hold off until they
Yeah.
get us a
I'd like to talk to
response?
I wanna
Tim,
talk to
yeah.
Tim on this one.
Yeah.
I would like
just-
to
I
also
don't-
hold off to
Oh,
see
when
what
they-
they get
yes,
for us
yes.
on Monday or Tuesday,
I
to see
agree.
if they, what it would be like, or Tim may have the answer by
Yeah.
Thursday, but,
I agree.
Yeah, we have to understand what our liability is.
yes.
Correct. And the timing.
And this comes off our cherry sheet, so we get assessed for this, so, which means that
I
our
agree.
budget's already cut another 71,000 before we even get to decide.
When's sewer coming?
Tomorrow night.
So we don't need to worry about those.
Yep.
Is 26 still on? We didn't
The
walk
tower?
away from
This
this?
is a different
Different
warrant.
one?
This
Okay.
is the town property.
I thought that was being passed over,
Is that what they said?
26.
I don't know.
All right, we'll find out.
If it's the one I was thinking about, the applicant backed out of the
Well, that
agreement.
wasn't a warrant article for this anyway. That was just before the planning board for a special permit. It got all confused with this warrant article because Mr. Whitney assumed that if they didn't take Indian Path and move it to Snow Road, then it would go into the town property, and he doesn't want a South Dollar at all, so. That was a different issue. That was before the planning board, and they withdrew their request, or whatever you call it, before the planning board. But this is what Tim has been wanting from, this was the original warrant article from the beginning, and this is town-owned property.
Why don't we
That
wait
I'm
until Tim is
assuming
here?
that he would want a tower on it,
Okay.
or whatever.
Mr. Whitney is coming in tomorrow night.
Yeah. I heard he didn't do well tonight.
All right,
And the
so
sewer's coming in tomorrow.
we're waiting on that. So we're waiting on sewer.
What's our,
That leaves us-
Stabilization accounts.
Yeah.
what various
No,
stabilization?
yeah, we don't, I don't even know what
So-
What
accounts.
various
So that looks like a
stabilization
wait for
accounts?
Tim one.
That's a wait for Tim, unless he's saying that they, no, because that's when you establish the stabilization and then you put money into it. This is different. I don't know. what
Yep.
he's-
I don't know, how many various stabilization accounts do we have? We have just one, but that,
We have we have the road, we have the capital projects, we have,
well, I think he's talking about our regular stabilization account, I think, anyway, all right.
All right. Any additional discussion on the warrants?
nope, not tonight.
Okay. Next agenda items to look at the Finance Committee and Reserve Fund budgets.
Okay.
So we should have a packet with that.
This is for FY '21?
Yeah. So the front page, you,
Oh, '21, yeah.
it's roughly the request, and the, next two pages give you FY '19 and FY '20. So we're continuing to, reduce our expenses, because the printing has been quite successful, on our own.
Yeah, I think that's, it's arduous for you, but I think it's been working.
I think it's been great.
Yeah.
Just having the document that you have in front of you right now as a working document is great.
Yeah.
So I'm able to work off that on a, after each hearing and produce it as we go along, which is why I'm very thankful for you voting tonight on them, because I'm able to put it together.
Good.
as we go. But we are able to reduce, and I'm looking primarily at expenses. If you look at the conference seminars, that's for what you'll be attending, for example, on October 26th. We're actually budgeted at $245.
Yeah.
Or, so anyhow, I think I said that wrong.
No, we actually spent $245.
We spent,
Spent $245, and so, in the budget this year was put in at $300. And we spent $300 for this upcoming seminar.
Okay.
So the number's perfect.
Okay.
And I would guess that the anticipation at $50 a member, 6 members is a pretty high number for you guys to
Yeah. It's fine.
attend. The office supplies, that is dedicated to legal publication and advertising, I'm suggesting that you keep it at the $3,100. We have not experienced a special town meeting to date, other than the May edition, normal edition. And, that number, I'm not comfortable suggesting to you that we reduce it just yet.
Okay.
The next one, which is dedicated to supplies and internet access,
So, hang on a second. So for the 5,400, why was that was so high historically? Because of the printing requirements?
yes.
Because they
Yep.
charge us so much.
Huge amount of money.
Got it. Okay, so we cut those all out, but we're not quite sure where our steady state is.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, all right.
There's also a contingency there for a special town meeting.
Yeah, got it.
and I think I would keep the special town meeting in for a couple of years until we see that,
We have money to
we
run.
have money to burn.
Yeah, I mean, we spent, 1,278 for
Yep.
19, so even if we added another $400, we're still overly safe with 31.
Okay.
But I would hate to see us cut it so close,
Yeah, I agree.
but it's still a pretty big number.
Yep.
The next number, I think we can cut again, to 500 from the 800.
Okay. That's just,
Office and
Supplies.
supplies.
It's basically cartridges for the printer.
Yep, okay.
and your internet.
And internet. Meals, has worked out very well at 300. That's for the Saturday meetings.
Yep.
Dues and membership, we've been consistent, with, 245. I'm suggesting we put it up to 325, and I think it'll be more than safe.
Yeah, they've been raising their dues off a little more often than they used to in the past, so I think this would be good to keep it there.
Yep.
That looks good to me.
Yeah. We have such a complicated budget
I know we do.
anyway.
Oh, I see, there's what we spent so far. I was looking at, oh, I see. Okay.
And I would keep the reserve fund the same.
I would too, 75?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the salary, the position, for finance committee salary, Matt, can you talk to that rather than I talk to that?
Sure. Yeah, so I think there's a discussion that needs to be had around Sue's salary, and in light of some of the other positions in town and where she is relative to those. And so I think, FinCom has to figure out whether she's being compensated adequately and whether that makes sense. And if not, how we navigate through. There's no actual process, but, my observation is that Tim always has a plan for 2 or 3 employees in town that just, they've got a gap with what they're getting paid versus what the market is for that position. So I don't know how we navigate through that, but I would recommend that we think about that this year.
I agree, but I think you should get more. However, we've asked for a large increase like 2 years ago, right?
2 years ago, yes, and then last year, it looks like it's a big jump, but we increased the hours by,
So it
20,
was hours.
from 520
last
to
year.
540, and that was to compensate for the printing each
Mhm.
town meeting. So I am, as I said to Matt, I'm comfortable with the salary. I'm looking at the position. And, it's taking myself out of the equation and looking at it as a position, and would like it just simply to stay, or get to, not at the bottom of the barrel, and be equal to others who are carrying the same position.
And what do they get?
I don't know.
Oh.
It
So
would
that's
be
gonna be the
interesting.
tough thing, is what are the comparables?
Well, I think
Right.
you need to compare the administrative assistant of all finance committee members in the state to see what, we have to find some secretariat comparable to what
Correct, yeah.
other finance committee members are paying, so.
Yep. So do we want to assign somebody on the committee to kind of do some research, or, that makes sense to me?
Is it just talking to other towns, or?
Yeah, so we need some data, right? So
Yep.
Yeah, it's just talking to
it's
surrounding
it's
towns.
basically figuring out for an equivalent position in the sort of, comparable towns, what's, if we were to go to hire Sue again, what would the market rate be for that?
A lot higher than what.
Oh, I
we're
know it
paying.
would, but-
Absolutely.
Sure.
But you
Yeah.
can't just say that we
Correct.
we should be paying her more. We have to actually have, some
Right.
benchmark
We
for
need
it.
backup.
Right, at work, I would tell an HR person, go benchmark this role, and you'd identify whatever the gap is, up or down, and then make some adjustment plan over time, so.
Was it calling HR departments in the towns that we,
I mean, it's all public information, right?
I don't know where you'd
No,
find.
there is,
Can't you just look up each town's budget? Like, we have our line item in here. It's that
I know,
easy.
but isn't, yeah, I get, I'm like,
I don't know.
but I don't know their hours, like how you'd have to know hours to back into the hourly.
You can certainly start by looking up the towns.
so
pick
what are
7
your
or 8.
hours again?
540.
Right.
540?
540 hours a year, so it's just a little bit over 10 hours a week.
You can start with that and then make a phone call.
So I'm part-time, and no benefits. And the question of being a finance committee assistant versus an office manager has crossed my mind, that there's a difference. I don't know what it is, and I'm very hesitant to ask. I don't know who to ask.
Sure. I mean, that's going to be the challenge, is actually come up.
Well, it's
with a
actually putting
reasonable
like a
comparable.
list of your responsibilities, so you have to kind of like put them next to each other and say, well, what do you do versus what does an administrative
Right.
assistant do?
Yeah.
Right? Am I right in saying?
Mhm.
Because
So Colleen, do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Can
Also
you,
check
I'm sorry.
with- I'm sorry. Also check with Becca. They used to have a Massachusetts book, and I don't remember the name of it, but it had jobs in there and for various towns with salary numbers. I remember we looked at that a long time ago when I was on the personnel committee. But ask about that, if there is some kind of state book that they have in the office that they can look at comparable. But I think you're gonna have to make phone calls because Sue's position is unique from many of the other departments in this town because she doesn't, they have their own departments and use their own secretary.
Right.
And so
So
She's
to get a
very
list
unique.
of her duties, would that be
we
useless?
need a job, well, we.
So
have
it
to have
just so
job
hands,
description.
happens, we have this whole run book that Sue nicely put together for us.
Yes. And
it's a very independent position.
But can you list what your responsibilities are, and maybe we can start?
Yes, basically through
Well-
the manual.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
what, like her
I-
functions, what she actually does is in the manual, so
Perfect.
we'll talk about that in a
Yeah,
minute.
you
And
can
I
just
think
like
Colleen could probably use that, but we probably, I don't know if a job description was ever written for you. I don't think so.
No, and I think it should be.
A long time ago when, actually, Sue, you were on the
Personnel,
defunct committee.
Yep.
Because I was called its secretary, and then through somewhere along the line, became an assistant.
right.
And they're also, Sue, what was the name of that committee that you're on?
Personnel, Yep.
There was also, I was also on steps and all that good stuff, and
yeah,
then all
there
that's
was,
gone.
yeah, and that's all,
There's no-
that was
it
a whole
doesn't
different
exist.
thing, yeah.
So is that how we got here today? That at some point you kind of,
We compared, the large raise from 2 fiscal years ago was, we compared it to the zoning board of appeals.
so, but that was a large percentage raise, but a small dollar raise, right? I mean, it was.
$2,000, right? Is that what you're talking about?
I don't remember.
Are you talking,
Yes. And then last year, we continued with the 2%.
Got it.
How quickly do you need this
Like I said, it looks a little
information?
bit larger simply because the hours were added on. So it looks like.
And Tim
Good-
kind
it's
of
a
puts
good
this through
question.
the,
so when does he
Hard
need,
times.
Shortly after town meeting.
there you go, shortly after town meeting.
Which town meeting, like the one
October.
coming?
October.
21st.
yeah. He, kind of made us jump through hoops a couple of years ago.
He
when we
did.
wanted to get a raise, and I remember one year when David Libby was chair, and Tim insisted we do an evaluation on her.
Yep, I remember that.
And I think I was the only one who passed in the evaluation to David, but, yeah, he made us jump through hoops. He wouldn't give her a raise
That's why I'm
unless we
saying, I
had
think-
it in there.
I think we
And then
need,
he only gives them 2%.
yeah, but I think that's why we need like the meat to be able
I
to
know.
say, okay, this is ridiculous, what,
I
$20
did
an hour
sit
is
down one year
ridiculous.
with Doug, and Sue, and we sat down, and Doug had gone, and I said, just give me the, I said, there isn't any equivalent to compare her to.
Right.
I said, but then take from the DPW department, the lowest salary scale person, and we did it that, and it bumped her up a little bit, but not as much as.
So again, that
Sue.
helps, but it's a completely arbitrary way to do it.
Well,
No,
that
but
was
if you
the only
look,
way.
but if you look
No, I
at
know, I
other
get it.
towns, who, just so she has an idea, who would you consider, similar towns? Like, you can't do a Shrewsbury, right?
So I
No.
would talk to the Sustainability Commission, because they've come up with a list of comparable towns.
Yep, I have that list.
Oh,
So there you go.
All right, then go and
Got
and
it.
use that then. And
And
I
I
don't
think
know,
hourly rate is probably the comparable,
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
W-
Yeah.
With similar responsibilities.
Yeah, no,
but
I
I
agree.
don't want to compare her unique situation, whatever their secretaries are getting or assistants to the finance committee. If their job is part-time or full-time, just take that number and we can work, figure something out, because the finance committee aren't all that different in their responsibilities and
Right.
functions like we are here. So, the only thing would be is if their secretary, and I keep saying it's an administrative assistant, is coming from a department, a town department, or they've hired somebody outside, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's
That's
more
why.
asking, is it someone like Sue, and then what's her hour?
Right.
Versus, are you pulling from another department?
Right.
And what, and then that way you, yeah.
Right.
Which is, that will be a little more trickier.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, so let's just see what's out there.
all right.
Thank you.
You're not gonna be here tomorrow night, Eric?
I will not be here tomorrow. How's our quorum look for Thursday? Because I'm gonna have to pay for a babysitter if I need to come Thursday, and I'd rather not pay
Yeah, I
for a
can't come
babysitter.
Thursday, so what's the,
You're not coming Thursday?
I can't,
after
I
you
have
come
a,
on the second?
well, I can be late, but I can't be on time. I have a meeting at the school.
So wait, so how are we doing for tomorrow?
Okay,
I'm here.
I'm here.
I cannot make it tomorrow.
I'm here. Are you here?
No,
Barry's
You're
here.
not here?
Barry,
So one,
when are
two,
you not
three,
here?
four.
tomorrow.
Okay, so I have Eric is absent, Deanne with a question mark, Mark with a question.
Mm-mm.
Heather, I had you down as late
For when?
tomorrow?
No, I will be here now.
Okay,
That meeting got my other one got
It's
canceled.
Thursday,
Okay,
she
Now
will
it's
be there.
Thursday.
will be absent. Irene is a question mark,
Mm-mm.
Oh, 'cause she's sick.
I had a slight
believe
cold
it's
and I
with no
got
quorum.
here.
Okay.
So we need one of the three to show up tomorrow.
this is tomorrow.
Yeah, Dan, Mark, or
Yeah, where is Dan not?
Or Irene.
Was Mark just gonna be one night? He wasn't sure if it was tonight or tomorrow, so he could.
He wasn't sure, he wasn't clear, so I
Because
I
he
have
works with
question
two
marks on it.
sets of selectmen,
Yeah,
so.
Dan is a definite no.
Well, unless he's back from Florida, is he coming home? You know?
I don't know.
So if
thought
we
he was
don't
gonna
have
be there
quorum,
7
we can
days.
still have the meeting, do the information gathering, we can't take any votes though.
You used to be able to do that. but
Not
you're no
anymore.
longer able to do that.
Okay, because you couldn't open the meeting.
You have to have a quorum.
Yeah.
The open meeting law changed.
Okay, so he's not gonna be here, he won't be here. So you need Irene, Mark, or Dan.
Just send out a
Yeah.
signal to say one of you three has to be here to make a quorum.
So I tell her she can sit like, I don't know, in the hallway,
We could
That's
put
right.
her, yeah,
so she doesn't get all of us sick.
Okay.
how bad is her
Just tell them to
cold?
play the nose game.
How's Thursday look?
Thursday, it looks like, just you.
And me,
Okay.
and me.
Of course, I have to
And
miss the
Heather,
good
sorry,
one.
Heather.
Yeah, because Mark will be back, Dan should be back.
Yeah, we have sustainability Thursday, but we plan to be here and bag the
Well,
sustainability.
that's your first responsibility is to this committee first.
Is it?
It is.
Yes.
It is Barry.
It is.
Absolutely, yes.
But my responsibility is to my children, so I'm
Did he
going to the
send
school.
out the assignment?
What time does that start?
Did you get your assignments?
Sorta, kinda, yeah.
I beg your
7
pardon?
o'clock.
You're good to go.
All right, well, nope, we're not good to go.
Oh.
Sue put together the finance committee manual, so I just want for everybody to look at that. So
Can
that,
we
that
Will you
was,
read that at home
Home,
and come
yeah.
back and
Yeah.
discuss it tomorrow?
we can, but
Yeah.
if everybody could take a look at it, you know, Sue put a considerable amount of work into it, and it's obviously an important thing that we discussed last year, so that's fine.
Yes, I think it is important, but
So let's talk about
We
that.
can put that to Monday, if you'd like, as on the agenda, to, you know, now that you're going to review it, to give you folks the time to review as well as the budget.
It's gonna take
Yeah.
me more than,
Monday's the second.
Sure. Let's do
that
that.
makes sense.
you did so much.
I
We all
did when
did.
she went in
We
the
all did.
hospital.
I know.
I found out the hard way.
That's right, you did.
Mm.
All right.
Okay, and there's, tomorrow you have, in your packet, these are the agendas.
Yep.
For,
For tomorrow.
Wednesday and Thursday. So we did it a little bit different this year, starting with, 3 full days, in this week. We never usually meet on a Tuesday initially, so we may, be able to be done on Monday, depending on what we hear from the mosquito control.
Is this transfer just a heads up?
The transfer will be discussed with, Tim on Thursday, which is why there's an amended agenda.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, very good. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Motion-